Drafting a pros versus Joe's team on the FFPC. That's what we're doing today on Stealing Bananas, a special edition of Stealing Bananas. We're live on the ship chasing airwaves. I'm Ben Gretsch. Shawn Siegel is here. Pete is not, but Pat is to hang out with us while we draft. We're picking out of the 12 slot. Let's do it.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar. Alpha play chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally this boys. You're right.
I always love the intro hitting the it looks like we're finally piss boys. Shawn, we're drafting out of the 12 slot today. We might have to be piss boys today.
We are. You look at ADP for FFPC best ball tournaments, and wide receivers are the best pick all the way down. And that is both very fun and probably not the optimal way to approach a best ball draft. But
let's say that we're 4 picks into a main event, and it's wide receiver, wide receiver.
Yeah, but those turtles keep going. So I mean, 6, 8. At some point, the roster construction explorer, the research out there does tell you to stop. Can we just ignore the research? We just keep taking wide receivers today.
I'm down.
Shawn, our main that just started, we have the 111, and we went. What is it? AJ Brown, Lamb, Debo, and DK Metcalf, which is a pretty fun start. We got some pretty good values in each of those turns. So
spoilers for the mini episodes.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't have mentioned that. I just was thinking about it. Spoiler alert! All right, we won't spoil. I was spoiling Pete's draft last night. I'm the spoiler around here. Travis Kelce goes 101, and then Chase and Jefferson. So we're already off and running.
Yeah, Travis Kelce, huge weapon in this format. As I was mentioning on our preview show, his results have been so good that it makes every other position in the first round look bad over the recent history. Obviously, if you don't have Travis Kelce, you are going to have to take a different position. You could reach for Mark Andrews here. How early is too early for Mark Andrews in tight end premium?
I mean, we were thinking about him in the early second round, and I was making the case that I think he's going to land at the 1-2 turn when it's all said and done. Like when we're live in Vegas, he was going there last year, and I feel just as good about him and better about the Ravens. So I'm like, why am I not interested in Mark Andrews in the late first again? So I mean, yeah, I would be. And it kind of gets a little flat right around here, right? So if someone were to take him right now, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, Bijan Robinson, at least in the drafts that I participated in, if you track the ADP tools a little bit, you saw Robinson for a few days there, maybe sliding a little bit. It seems like he's pretty well reestablished himself as a straightforward first-round pick. We know he's going to go in this format a little bit earlier than others because you have the double flex. You can get 4 running backs in there if you so desire. Ben, was there a final decision on zero RB versus robust running back in this draft? I'm still trying to get you on Barkley Taylor at the 1-2.
Yeah, Shawn and I have done a very little bit, like exchanging 2 emails of planning for this.
And a show. If you want to check out the show.
Oh, yeah, and a show. That's right. I guess we did a whole podcast. A little bit. But
just a little.
I gotta mention Daigle getting Cooper Kupp at the 108. Our buddy John Daigle. Nice start for him.
Very nice start for Daigle.
Eckler goes 7. Diggs goes 9. Shawn, the Barkley Taylor start that you were floating. Well, Barkley just went. So, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do it. I was really in, but unfortunately, we are not going to be able to do it.
What I was about to say was yes.
Yes, I was totally down. So we still have AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb on the board. Amon-Ra St. Brown on the board. more wide receivers on the board. We're gonna have plenty to choose from. Taylor, I think, is very much a viable option in this range. Lamb does go. But I personally, I like these receivers so much that and especially in the FFPC format, I just like, I want to be deep at receiver, I guess. I don't know. What are you thinking, Shawn?
Well, I'm always a little tempted in these drafts to play against the guys I'm actually taking. You have A.J. Brown and Devontae Adams as ultra efficient superstars. When I drafted with Pat the other day, I kind of nudged us off Devontae Adams, which is always tough because it's Devontae Adams. I mean, if
But you're not drafting with
guys,
Pat. I don't want to take Adams. We're down to 20 seconds.
I'm just here to hang out.
I'm okay with A.J. Brown for sure.
but you want Garrett Wilson.
Or Amon-Ra, yeah. Yeah, Garrett Wilson. Let's take Garrett Wilson.
Okay.
And then I could go either way with A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I told you in our little quick back and forth a Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown start. I mean, that's fun. Like, it's, yeah, like we're projecting breakouts. They're not the established superstars. It's not Devontae Adams. But, like, you know, what are you going to do? Like, you just project the next superstars. That's the more fun thing to do.
Yeah, project the next superstars. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, this comment. Break
Well-
room.
Might as well take Brees. Yeah, I love it. We could have went Taylor Brees, Shawn. We could have started robust with Taylor Brees.
Yeah, you get the guys who are going to go 1-2 in next year's draft.
Yeah, there
And
you
where
go.
were we on that a second ago? You mentioned you have to bet on a little bit of projection. I've got an article about to come out looking at the top or the best pick in the first 5 rounds of FFPC main event and Fantasy Pros drafts. Ben, we're going to try and win the main event this year. Maybe that will be on a team we draft with Pat. Obviously, that would be fun. Bring
I'm
that
into
element in there. I mean, my prediction the other day on the show was that Pat's going to go back to back, win $1 million plus 2 years in a row. So, I mean, no pressure, but back to back.
Yeah, no pressure.
So we have that.
Wait,
in
Shawn,
there.
you're going to write an article soon about the best pick in the main event. I'm trying to think of who that would be because you just wrote a great article about Brees Hall. You just wrote another great article about JSN, who would be probably my 2 biggest guesses. So I'm interested.
Well, I did want to ask. You guys said that you picked DK Metcalf the other day at the 3-4. Is that right? Was there any
No.
consideration of just taking the best player? Yeah, so that's fine.
There was.
There was. We did do
Spoiler
that
alert
once.
for the minisodes. You got to listen to the minisodes. But
So this is our start in reverse order out of the 11. This isn't hitting the audio waves, and we've already teased it, so we might as well just fully spoil our first 4 picks. We took Debo at the 311 over DK, and we were like, all right, Room, you can have DK. You can't force us into DK Metcalf. And then the guy at the 12 just didn't take him. So then we're like, at the 402, Shawn, I think that's somewhat defensible. Do you disagree?
No, I have some shares of Metcalf at the 3-4 turn. Because I think that once he gets to that point, he is interesting in the case where one of the things in looking at JSN are that, I mean, you have rookie receivers who have come into loaded receiver groups before and dusted those guys. And yet you also have a case where Calvin Ridley comes out and puts up some big numbers along with peripheral receivers and tight ends on that Falcons team putting up big numbers. And Julio Jones goes absolutely scorched earth. If DK Metcalf fills that role this year, then I think at the 3-4 turn is a place where, I mean, you would want to get a little bit of exposure. Metcalf is probably mildly overrated in terms of how people think of him as an NFL player from that combination of talent and skill together. And yet, I mean, he has the size, he has the athleticism. He's going to be in what seems like at least mildly favorable offense. When you're getting those pieces, a monster season, if teams try to take away Tyler Lockett, if they try and take away JSN, which I kind of don't think is possible, it's kind of like trying to take away Cooper Kupp or trying to take away Christian McCaffrey. But if they do that, I mean, you could see DK Metcalf go off for 15 touchdowns, in which case at the 3-4 turn, you probably want to have some shares.
Yeah, I don't have much of them, but that felt like it is kind of a flat tier, so you could talk yourself into a number of other guys instead of DK. But, we're going to see a lot of early third round DK Metcalf, I think. We certainly are an underdog, and we'll probably see some of that here. And his ADP is more like mid-third generally. So I was hoping maybe this is one of the cheaper shares we see, and then we can move on with our lives.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense.
I think your exact point was that we don't have to worry about drafting him anymore. We'll just get our
we just
share.
we won't think about DK Metcalf again, except on this team. Daigle with Cup and Andrews.
Yeah,
I mean that's a fun start in FFPC. That's a very fun start
for sure.
The article that I was doing a circling around job of teasing about the top pick in each of the first 5 rounds. In the first round, you don't want to go out and just, pick Justin Jefferson, which is obvious. Only one person gets that. I went ahead and decided to take a guy with a round 2 ADP as my best pick in round 1. It was Garrett Wilson. We have selected him here. I like that pick. Ben, you mentioned in your projections that you have...
Back that up a little bit.
Yeah,
back that up a little bit. I want to hear your take. Don't make me...
Garrett Wilson's the best pick in the first round?
Yeah, I broadcast with Shawn a lot, so I can hear him asking me to make a Garrett Wilson take, and I'm stopping you right now, and I'm asking you to make the Garrett Wilson take.
This is how Shawn sets up questions.
Yeah.
He says Garrett Wilson.
I'm happy to make it another time, but you just said he's the best pick in the first round, so you have to make it right now.
You need to talk about that now.
I was gonna lead Ben into Amon-Ra St. Brown. I felt like Garrett Wilson in the first round.
We'll get to Amon-Ra. You talk about Garrett first.
It speaks for itself. I know. That's exactly right. It's a Shawn take that he likes to throw in that speaks for itself.
Well, you pull up the fantastic Stealing Signals tool, which obviously is off of Ben's amazing brand there. We have the Sports Info Solutions numbers in there. So folks who are used to PFF, you're going to have to adjust a little bit mentally for what you're looking at there. But Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson there, side by side, targets per route, 27% to 26%. Depth of target, identical. Obviously, then you get weighted targets per route, identical.
Sorry, this is
the
Garrett
difference there. Garrett Wilson and Justin Jefferson.
Oh, okay.
The difference there is that you get 10 yards per target for Jefferson, 7.5 for Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson doing all that damage with the worst quarterback situation in the NFL looked utterly amazing in a situation that devastated Elijah Moore, a player that we have plenty of circumstantial evidence to believe is actually also very good. They get rid of Elijah Moore, who's the one guy in kind of a best case scenario who could have siphoned a ton of volume from Wilson. They replaced him with these Green Bay castoffs. I mean, you're looking at a guy who is going to compete for that 30% target share, which puts him up with those guys going in the top 5. One of my concerns is that Aaron Rodgers was actually terrible last season. And yet, even in that season, he created a year where Christian Watson could go for 9.6 yards per target and have that weighted targets per route in a range where you're looking at him as a potential breakout. And so, I mean, when you look through that situation, and you don't want to put too much evidence into the puff piece stuff, but I mean, Aaron Rodgers is saying that Garrett Wilson is the new Devontae Adams. So, I mean, at least this isn't a situation where he hates his guys, which we know he's been in plenty of times.
That point you just made, I mean, I've been in on Wilson, but the point you just made about Rodgers even not playing particularly well last year, but the way he elevated Christian Watson on a team that had Alan Lazard and had Randall Cobb and those guys, but he was getting Watson his numbers, getting him the ball. He mentioned it after that one game where Watson ran the wrong route in the red zone, where he's you want to score the touchdowns, you want to win the offensive rookie of the year, you got to run the right route or something. He made a little comment in a post-game interview that has always stuck with me, where they were force-feeding Watson stats. The fact that he was able to do that last year, and then you add in the potential that maybe this is the Aaron Rodgers sort of, FU tour, right? The Tom Brady to Tampa.
I want a lot in the red zone. I'll buy that part of it for sure.
He's going to try to throw 50 touchdowns and he's not going to get there, but he's going to try to, right? And the Jets coaches are going to let him. That's one of the things when you get Aaron Rodgers, you do whatever you can to keep him happy. Especially in year one. I feel like that's probably a likely outcome there. So, if he feels that way about Garrett Wilson, and then he also maybe is playing better overall, Yeah, I'm even more excited about Garrett Wilson and hearing you talk about him. Excited for this article you're going to write up as well. Because you said you're going to name the best pick in every round. That was the teaser that was your first round pick.
Well,
you're going hot with your
wasn't even a
first
teaser.
round pick.
It was a setup to get you to talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown. So let's give Shawn what he wanted here and tell us about. Well, I don't know what was the question, Shawn.
I mean, Amon-Ra's already at 30% target share. All you got to do is generate, some efficiency.
You're going to mention
Jameson Williams, who is like actually never going to play at this point. So,
yeah.
You were going to mention my projections where, Amon-Ra comes in real hot, above Devontae Adams, above CeeDee Lamb, above A.J. Brown. Wide receiver 6. Because, it's not hard to project him for a lot of targets. And he's also been sneaky, really efficient despite being a low ADOT guy. We were talking about this the other day, Pat, but the yak has been there. The 2.4 yards per route run last year for a slot guy, like a low ADOT slot guy to be a 2.4 yards per route run guy is really impressive.
It is really
It's like
impressive.
Cooper Kupp type.
Yeah, because when you have an average depth of target that low, your yards per target is likely to be low. Yards per target is positively correlated with ADOT. The deeper downfield you're targeted, the more yards you're likely to generate per target because you get those splash play opportunities. Even if you catch the ball at a lower rate, when you do catch the ball, it means something. And for Amon-Ra, it just shows he's really good after the catch. He's really good, at kind of, he's not, it's funny because he's not like this game breaking guy after the catch, but I guess he's just kind of cuppish, right? He's just really solid, gets yards consistently after the catch. It's a very impressive number for his ADOT.
Mm-hmm. Shawn, we are on deck. Only 2 receivers have gone in the third round, DK Metcalf and DeAndre Hopkins, interestingly. That is that area where a lot of names can fit into this sort of wide receiver 15, wide receiver 16 range after T. Higgins, Devonta Smith have gone off at wide receiver 13 and 14, typically. 4 quarterbacks in this round: Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. TJ Hawkinson went off the board. Calvin Ridley goes as well. Keenan Allen falls to us here. Debo is there for us. Josh Jacobs has also fallen here. I'm getting pretty concerned about a potential Josh Jacobs holdout. Jahmyr Gibbs did not make it back to us. He went 305. That's sort of the group that I'm looking at. What are you thinking?
Well, we had talked going Allen, Samuel, and that's really hard for me to resist because I think those guys are 2-3 turn players. And yet we also discussed having some fun and putting some pressure on the room by going Pitts, Kittle, 2 guys who were completely out of position to take. That's one of the things you have to deal with when you're on the edge here, not in position to take those elite tight ends that are so important for this format. We have 15 seconds. Which way are we going to go? Not that we have to go with the same position, but it is fun.
Yeah, I think we leave the tight ends out there. Because of another way we've talked about potentially playing the tight end position, which we'll get to. But we take Keenan Allen there. We don't have to play both the same position. We could go Keenan Allen Pitts, unless you want it. It'd be kind of fun to get an anchor Kyle Pitts.
Pat, we have 45 seconds here. Can you make a pitch for Travis Etienne? Is there any chance that they'll let him be their Jamal Charles as opposed to? I know that you're actually pretty high on Bigsby, and I do try and grab him anytime he falls below ADP. But that's the question I'm trying to really parse there with the Jaguars.
The issue with ETN, I think he's misunderstood, right? He's more like a Dalvin Cook or something. He's an explosion back. His success rate was great, but he wasn't that great as a receiver, and they didn't use him much. And they weirdly been talking up Bigsby as a receiver, which isn't really even his skill set. So I'm just worried about the committee there. I feel like if I was going to detour away, I'd have.
We're not taking ETN. I'm really confused why Shawn asked you about him. You're not even in the draft, on the clock. He was just running down the clock. That was such a filibuster.
He was going to convince us to possibly think about the right detour. Because,
that's what I said. I said if I was going to take a detour, it would be for the most fun. And then Ben immediately clicked Deebo Samuel. But I was saying Pitts.
Shawn's on the 1 and 2. Shawn clicked Deebo Samuel. He's
so I didn't convince you, Shawn.
No.
Well,
I've done a bad job. I didn't convince Shawn Siegel to take Kyle Pitts. I clearly I need to dial in a little bit more on this stream.
We do have a fun way to play tight end.
It feels like a mistake now. I always want to have you.
Herbert goes 402. I mean, I like the pick. I was kind of like holding out some vague hope that he might come all the way back to 5.6 if we got Keenan at 3.4. That ain't happening.
503 is what I'm seeing there for his ADP.
Herbert. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't likely to come all the way back to 5.6 in best ball, but
Keenan and Debo are pretty sweet picks at the 3-4 turn, though, I have to say.
We have a really fun receiver room. I mean, that's all that matters. Literally the only thing that I care about. Let's just keep taking receivers. Can we take 20 receivers?
Yeah, I think you can.
I love this comment. If you're going to take a running back, why not the running back that is in fact a wide receiver? Deebo Samuel. Love it. So Josh Jacobs finally goes at 404. Shawn, of all the names that we discussed there, you didn't even consider Jacobs. Can I take that to mean that you are as concerned as I'm starting to get about a holdout? He's been a guy who has talked about it's not about him, it's about the guys coming behind him and those types of things. Way back when he was a rookie coming into the league, there was a lot of talk about his, maturity, some of the stuff about his upbringing. I know there was stories about how he lived in a van growing up and, a hard upbringing, but how it helped like raise his sisters. If I remember correctly, I don't want to mess that up. And I apologize if I am messing it up, but the idea was that he was a very grounded human being as a result, or that was the point of a lot of those stories with Jacobs. He strikes me as the type of player that would care about the bigger picture. Is that something that you're feeling as well with Jacobs? Like, I feel like he might actually hold out, and really push this, whereas Barkley has already signed and is back.
Well, I like Josh Jacobs, and I like anybody who is going to make a really strong stand for whatever their personal integrity is asking them to do. I think that practically it may not work that way. I mean, you think about one of the things that's really hurt running backs, and the main thing is just that guys like Ezekiel Elliott and Joe Mixon are not going to age very well. Their teams are not going to want them. Josh Jacobs is probably somewhat similar, although I think that, you could make a case certainly that he's better than Joe Mixon. The problem is that you have stuff like the Le'Veon Bell situation happen where a guy holds out and comes back and is completely washed, and that doesn't help, obviously, the position. What you have to go out and do if you want to help the guys coming after you is that you have to go out there and play, put up another massive season, create a situation where you do have some more leverage, sign a big contract, go out there and then perform at age 27, 28, 29, 30, things that are very difficult to do as a running back. But that would be the only way that you can really accomplish it, it seems like. I actually had some really cool notes about Jacobs in the Javonte Williams piece that I'm working on. I felt a lot better about kind of where he is as a talent after working through some of those things. I do think that he could have a very nice 2023 season if everything falls into place. And yet at the same time, it makes some sense for them to take a little bit of work off of his plate. He traditionally has had trouble turning the broken tackles into actual yardage. There's some real risk with the overall offense. I think that you get some profiles in this range that are still more appealing to me personally, even though I think it's very important to give Jacobs full credit for what he did last year and what he could go do.
See, I think I would have taken, if I was in your guys' shoes here, I would have taken him with one of those two picks. I don't know who I would have taken. Well, I like Keenan and Debo a lot, but maybe Debo in PPR. It's just like, I think he is going to get the work. I think he's going to sign. I think he's going to get the work. And the thing about Jacobs is he strikes me as the type of guy that, Sacrilegious was just on Pete's Best Ball Breakfast stream talking through his Best Ball Data Bowl submission, and he had a really interesting submission that he's looking at kind of advance rate as it's sort of agnostic from the rosters that these players are actually on. So he's able to kind of like substitute players onto all the other rosters and see what the advance rate would be with that one, with like a appropriate swap. And Josh Jacobs had an actual advance rate that was lower than it should have been. He was drafted by, in general, teams that, weren't advancing to the rate that you would have expected given how good his season was.
If you swapped him to all the other teams, then he would have advanced at an even higher rate, sort of thing. The best part about that is that, and then Sky Moore was the opposite. So the teams who were taking Sky Moore were advancing those teams at a higher rate than they should have, and Josh Jacob drafters were advancing at a lower rate. I told Sacrilegious, I thanked him for bringing that note into my life.
Well, it's a double-edged sword because it means, okay, we're good at drafting generally, those of us who are taking Sky Moore, because he advanced at a higher rate than he should have, but he was also like sort of even worse pick than it seems. It might have been the worst pick on the board, and we had a highlight reel that he was like played.
Kenny Galladay level of.
Did he score a fantasy point? How can he actually be a worse pick than he seemed? He seemed pretty bad.
Apparently,
he didn't score any points.
Sacrilege just described him as a Kenny Galladay level pick. So I mean, it was a real body bag moment for ship chasing, but I am also criticizing the Boomers for not advancing Jacobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's so amazing. 6 percentage points lower than he should have advanced was his actual advance rate.
But I think that speaks to the fact that Jacobs was better liked by maybe a more normie drafter, shall we say. So I think when he signed, I think he is going to sign. I think he will rise quite a bit in ADP. Like I think he could be in the middle of the second round, given what he did last year and with a new contract. Like, do you guys disagree with me?
No,
about
that's
that?
A really interesting application of that data point, that's the type of person that would overdraft him from this point forward if he signs. But again, like I'm legit worried he doesn't sign. Like, aren't you worried about?
Not that worried. He doesn't have any leverage. Saquon just signed. Saquon provided a path. Like, one of these things, like, they could go, we'll give you $1 million more in incentive than Saquon got.
Yeah.
Are you not signing that? And technically he did do something for the guys who came out. Like, it's like, you don't sign the franchise tag. You use that leverage to get a better version of the franchise tag. That's like a thing running backs can do now. So I think that's
Saquon did provide that path. So they said that there's not after that date, they can't negotiate a long-term deal, right? And so the loophole was Saquon just negotiated a different 1-year deal that was better than the franchise tag. And that does provide an out for Jacobs as well to negotiate a much better 1-year deal. And like you said, it probably will have to come in higher than Saquon's to get him in, because Saquon's been sort of criticized for not getting enough or folding or what have you, but he obviously got something added.
My feeling on this stuff is that I want my discount, and then I won't be worried about it, right? But like, I'm getting Jacobs at the 309, 310, sometimes in the early 4th. Like, I'm getting a big discount, I think, relative to where he would be going. And I think that discount is only temporary. He often goes after Breece Hall now, which makes it easy for me because I'm still taking Breece Hall ahead of him. So, but now it's like everyone's gone. Andrews is gone. All the other running backs are gone. Josh Jacobs sitting there. Like, to me, it's an easy click right now.
Our buddy Robert in the chat says, can't you guys start discussing your pick before you get on the clock? Stressing me out. Maybe hasn't hung out on a lot of ship chasing streams before. This is basically what we do every time. We're like afraid to talk about it befking we're on the clock. Looking at a few of these other,
the final kind of little note there. I agree with everything that Pat said. For me, if Allen and Debo are still there, it's still not a big enough discount, I think.
Interesting.
The chat also recognizing my Rubens beard. Nice work. I was going to say a couple of the other well, we're on deck. I guess we'll talk about some of the other teams coming up, but like a couple of the other teams' starts so far. Shawn, we've gone 4 straight receivers. We're on deck. Deontay Johnson, Drake London, the last couple receivers off the board. At running back, we just had Alexander Madison and Miles Sanders go off. You floated an idea to me prior to this draft for this turn. it looks like we might even get a more fun version of that, is just the kind of note I'm going to make back to you. The drafter ahead of us is down to 10 seconds on the clock. Just waiting until that pick comes in before we actually talk through this. So David Montgomery goes. Shawn, you talked to me, floated an idea of potentially hitting on some running backs in this range. JK Dobbins, one of your favorites, 51 ADP. That's like the third pick of the 5th round, has made it all the way back to us at 512. So now we get like the potential to hit some really interesting running backs in this range. He did land on PUP to start camp. They signed Melvin Gordon. Are you thinking about Dobbins here? Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that Dobbins is the pick. We had floated making some huge reaches here. We don't necessarily.
But let's wait, because they might make it all the way back around to 7-8. So let's not mention all of them quite yet.
Well, I was just going to say not destroy the ADPs, but potentially hurt them some.
We'll just pretend like we don't, like no one's going to be able to figure out who those players are. We got JK Dobbins. Who do you want to do with the other one?
Well, you had mentioned some interesting quarterbacks. We have Justin Fields here.
Yeah. We do have Justin Fields here. I'm happy to take Justin Fields at this price. 51 ADP, another player going in the early part of the 5th round. We would have an opportunity to take him at the very end of, at the 601. We could also take, I mean, DJ Moore is the other guy that's really fallen. We could have taken them together. We did take Dobbins, so we can't do that. But Godwin is the next receiver after Moore, a guy I really like as well. A lot of good options here because there's also the other players that you wanted to reach on that I think are still in play. 14 seconds. I'll let you make the final call here.
No, we'll throw it back to you. You have Godwin with the same projection as the guys at the 4-5. I mean, the 3-4.
It's unbelievable.
The time ran out.
You guys have to make a decision sooner. 10 seconds to Shawn goes,
I go 14 seconds. I'll leave it up to you. And he goes, I'm going to throw it back to you and talk each other's 2 seconds left.
That's unbelievable.
I had us poised there for what we were going to do. I just wanted to see if Ben would come out and say, take the 5th receiver. Take Chris Godwin.
I did want
Godwin is tied with those guys at the 3-4 turn in your projections. He's tied with Calvin Ridley.
Shawn is sick. The chat. I mean, I do this with him all the time, and it drives me nuts. But no, Fields is a good structural pick there. The chat is having a rough time with what just happened.
This is I mean, I couldn't handle it. I can't believe that Shawn threw it back to you with 10 seconds left.
No, he threw it back with 2, and I was just stunned.
I had my finger on the button right there. Right there.
Well, I don't think you got it in, Shawn.
I would have
to
then communicate it back to you.
Well, yeah,
with 2 seconds.
We had our guy in the auto draft spot. We didn't auto draft a third player. We didn't auto draft a third player, is the point.
We nailed Justin Fields with the auto draft. We get the little star on the board. The first auto draft, it's the asterisk is there. Sicko hot potato from Kevin. He wrote ping pong auto draft. That's kind of what we were doing.
Yeah.
It's beautiful though. I think Fields structurally. Look, I mean, you're right. In my projections, Godwin is right up there with Keenan Allen and Deebo Samuel. I think he's way more talented than he's being given credit for, even considering the offensive issues. There's a lot of players that I think are less talented or have shown to not yet proven to be as talented as Godwin has consistently proven to be, that are going ahead of him in questionable offenses. I don't understand the discount on Godwin. I do think you would have been a fine pick there, but I think structurally getting Fields is a really pretty fun move there because we already have the 4 receivers. Now we have an anchor running back and we have an early QB. We're going to have to be playing tight end a little later. Go ahead, Pat.
Can I press you guys a little bit on Godwin? Especially now. Well, you guys didn't take him, and I have no skin in the game on this one if you did, but he's just someone that I haven't been able to share the enthusiasm with. I mean, I literally just took him about 3 minutes ago while you guys were drafting in a slow draft here. So it's not like I'm out on him, but I took him there in the 6th round, and I was like, "Oh, this is sweet." But I don't like the thing of he's kind of the same value as the guys going at the previous turn. He looks to me like in his statistical profile like more of a volume play over the last couple of years. I'm actually a little bit nervous about him in terms of, him coming off this ACL tear last year, didn't really post the efficiency numbers we were looking for. Certainly that could rebound in the second year off of that. But like, what is the statistical case for him being that kind of like level of slept on talent? Because he, in a number of the things that I look at, he didn't rate very well. I'll note one in particular, an open score last year. He was very poor. He had an open score of 42 last season, which was like 90th among all wide receivers and tight ends. It was pretty poor just among the wide recievers as well. I've just
so
ends, but yeah,
the statistical case would be statistical case would be that 2022 isn't indicative of who he was. He was coming off a late season ACL tear. This time last year during draft season, we were talking about him missing a lot of the year. It was a pretty big surprise that he actually played week 1. He talked after the Munich game against the Seahawks about that being the first game he trusted his knee. That was week 10. He played 9 games prior to that and hadn't really trusted his knee. You also have Tom Brady. I mean, there's a lot of ways to put this. Shawn, I think you put it the way that I like the most, which was to say that that Brady might have actually held back this offense a little bit last year. Like, he was a little bit, not to say washed up, but you said the last couple of years, Godwin's been an underneath sort of compiler. That's absolutely the case. Last 2 years, 8 out of 7.6 and 6.0. The 4 prior years of his career, well, the 2 prior years, 10.3 and 10.1, that was sort of his middle prime. The first 2 years, 13.2 and 12.8, a higher than average ADOT as a rotational youngster when they still had like Deshaun Jackson, and they had Jameis Winston playing quarterback. He was rotating sort of with Deshaun Jackson, as the other receiver opposite Evans. He, at a young age, had a strong yards per target at those ADOTs. In my projections, I use Racer, which is the air yard metric that is basically like yards per target, but it's how many air yards they convert into receiving yards. But I also use a depth-adjusted version of that. It's very similar to yards per target, as you were describing earlier, Pat, that at different ADOTs, the Racer is going to track differently. So I adjust for the actual average depth of the target and then how many air yards did they convert at that depth. Godwin is well above average at all of his depths, including last year. At a 6.0 ADOT, his yards per target was actually above average, sort of like a mini version of the Amon-Ra St. Brown stuff we were talking about. His yards per out run, it was a career low last year, but I do think he was, again, coming back from an ACL, playing earlier than he sort of should have been, and was still pretty good. A 1.76 yards per route run, career high 23.6 targets per route run. Again, the low ADOT's going to influence that. But basically, he's a guy I think that's won at all depths. He's won as a deep rotational deep threat early in his career. He won as like an intermediate, regular 10 ADOT guy. And then the last couple of years, I think more to do with Tom Brady than like his limitations, was an underneath guy. And then especially last year after coming off the ACL, it's like, okay, we're going to definitely make you an underneath guy. But like still was pretty good in that role. And so like a lot of people are talking about like Michael Gallup, he's going to be a second year removed, yada, yada. Before Michael Gallup's ACL, he wasn't even good the 2 years before his ACL. 2020 and 2021 were his 2 years prior. He tore his ACL in 2021. 2022, also not good coming back from the ACL. So there's a real question of like what you think he's getting back to 2 years removed from the ACL. I feel like Godwin doesn't get that benefit of the doubt just because he played through, like coming off the ACL, played more than he should have, and was still like pretty good. And so it's hard to be like, oh yeah, 1.76 yards per out run. We need to discount that as well. But I think we do. Like other than that year, he's never had a yards per out run below 1.87. Had multiple seasons over 2, multiple more seasons over 1.9. Like he's been a very good, consistently good player at different depths and at different in different roles. And now the big thing for me just is 2022, he was playing off an ACL. The second year off an ACL, he's the guy that I think we should be talking about. Second year off an ACL should be better than he was last year. And I feel like that's not mentioned with Godwin. I don't know. Maybe that's mentioned a lot, but I feel like it's not.
I've made the case that I think that Brady has hurt both of their profiles in ways that tend to not get focused on because you have all of the passing volume with him, which is obviously very good. And with Mike Evans, especially, you had this touchdown spike, which is very good and very important for fantasy. And so it's easy to miss the deterioration of other parts of their profile with Brady. And the thing with both of those guys is they're going to get a downgrade. They're going to get a bad quarterback. But I mean, these guys are used to playing with quarterbacks who have some pretty severe limitations.
Right.
These aren't guys who are playing with superstars. And so I think that almost offsets. Now, again, I mean, anytime you're playing with Baker Mayfield, you know what you
one of my
that's a big risk. But
one of my rules of thumb with the NFL is that it can always get worse.
Yeah,
It can always get worse. If you just
I thought
bet
your rule
on
of
the
thumb was bet against Baker Mayfield, because that would also be a good rule of thumb.
that is starting to be a rule of thumb as well. But it's just like, you're like, well, I don't know who Ian Book is, but certainly he can't be any worse than what we've already gotten. Oh God, the COVID restrictions have now been repealed. That's how bad that was. So I mean, I'm a little skeptical that I don't disagree that like Brady was probably hindering them at the end, but that doesn't mean that someone couldn't hinder them worse.
I thought you were also alluding to the fact that it was always possible the Bears and Falcons might run fewer plays. Selected a quarterback where
that would hurt me. That would really hurt me. I'm building a portfolio that's like that can't get worse, but maybe it does.
People are talking about like Baker killed OBJ. I mean, I think those are different receivers. I think there was a really good study by Stephen Ruiz at The Ringer a few years ago during that OBJ breakup that showed that Baker really struggles in the deep intermediate range. I'm a little bit concerned about his fit with Evans for that regard, but he's actually good on like legit deep balls. And then I think Baker he's better, or shows to be at least a little bit better in the shorter area as well. OBJ very specifically did a lot of his work in that deep intermediate range. Evans does too. So I'm a little more concerned about the fit for Evans. Godwin's the guy, again, can win at all depths. Like, unless you literally think Baker Mayfield can't complete a pass, I think Godwin will find somewhere to win. And if he can't complete a pass, they will bench him and they'll play like, yeah, it can get worse because then they could try to play Kyle Trask and he could suck too. And they could just have the worst team in the NFL this year. Like, that definitely can happen.
Kyle Trask might be like Mike Glennon in terms of
it could
how
be,
bad he is. Like,
yeah, it could be really bad. I agree with that. But
well,
I still think there's a lot of
really
volume there.
Based on what the actual players are seeing, then it would be really bad.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry, what did you say?
Well, it sounds like listening to the players that it's not even a real competition, which would indicate to you that Trask is
that Trask is terrible. Like that Baker's easily going to win the job. And then obviously you're going to get like 10 passes batted down at the line of scrimmage every game because Baker can't throw over the line of scrimmage for some reason. But like, I don't know, man. Like, this team has nothing behind them. The only other guys you can even project for targets are Russell Gage and Cade Otton, and neither of them is like that inspiring. And there's not a lot of depth beyond that. I love Trey Palmer, day 3 pick. I mean, he actually has an open runway because there's no one else down the depth chart. No running backs. They're not going to be like super run heavy. Like, we've been talking about that with Tampa's running game all offseason. Like, they don't really have anything. Rashad White obviously could be something, but he wasn't great last year, and he's the best bet, but nothing else behind that. Like, what else are they going to do but lean their offense into Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, who are very clearly the best 2 players that they have on the offensive side of the ball?
So my concern with that would be, well, you guys should pick because we don't need a repeat of that.
Yeah, so we get Pat Freiermuth goes off the board and David Njoku right before us here. Freiermuth is one I was interested in. Shawn, our secret running backs went as well. Probably not that big of a secret. We are back up. There are a lot of fun receivers still. Jackson Smith-Njigba has gone. But we have Kadarius Toney at the top of the queue. Just kidding. Treylon Burks, Jordan Addison, George Pickens, Jahan Dotson. I feel like Dotson might even be the one that I like the most. Just like really intriguing to me. But any of those guys sounds really fun. Where are you at on this turn?
Well, we're not emphasizing the correlation plays nearly as heavily in our fun draft here, where we also 72 teams. That's what we have to beat, right? 72 teams.
Yeah.
So we're going to build the perfect roster. Once you have JK Dobbins and Justin Fields, you've got the perfect roster. So we're going to build the perfect roster and not worry too much. But I do like having Dotson opposite that Deebo Samuel play. I like having him with the week 15 with Garrett Wilson. The second guy here I think James Cook is kind of interesting. Give us a second running back. Pickens, Burks will be the other two plays. Then you and I have talked about how we still like Burks, even with and maybe even more for the upside after the DeAndre Hopkins signing. Pickens could end up, being like wide receiver 15.
You love
breakout
James Cook.
year 2.
You love James Cook. If you want to take Cook, we got 10 seconds here. I'm comfortable with it. Structurally, I feel really good about the 5 receivers we've already built. A second running back here would come. Burks would be my pick for the wide receivers. We are going to take Cooks. I want to hear your case on it.
See, now you gave me a hard time. I was going to take the 3 seconds Treylon Burks right there if you hadn't said, don't let it get under 3.
Well, as soon as I told you could take Cook, you snap picked him. So he's in the queue. Shawn let you take Cook. Done.
You said I wasn't allowed to use the last 3 seconds, so I took.
You shouldn't have told me to take a running back. It's all your fault. Shawn notoriously has never.
I'm so glad I'm not on this team. It's so stressful.
Shawn, tell the people about James Cook. You've been really in on him. I want you to tell me about him too.
Well, I think when you look at James Cook and you get the explosive numbers, you get the before contact, you get the after contact, you get interesting evasion numbers. Now we know with the Bills that you're getting put in a situation where maybe there aren't as many defenders there, but I like to see these balanced profiles, especially in an offense or a situation where the team's kind of bet on this guy. And we get all the discussion about Damian Harris and Latavius Murray behind him. And yet, if we got a little bit of a move in this Bills offense, and if there was any truth at all, which Pat and I made a big trade where we gave up Justin Herbert and Jamar Chase, which the Jamar Chase part, I don't know. I may move him up to number 1 in my super flex rankings because I just don't really want to have a QB up there. I want to push back against all this anchor QB. We made that move for Josh Allen and A.J. Brown. If you're going to get A.J. Brown back, you're like, okay, we're going to make that move.
But
if we get a lot less
about right now,
I'm talking about Josh Allen. Josh Allen's profile. Is he going to run the ball? And if he doesn't, and we actually get a few passes to the running back, this is going to be the time when.
There we go.
With a quick aside for Jamar Chase, number 1 overall in Superflex.
It was like, why are we on Jamar Chase? I asked you about James Cook. What are we talking about Jamar Chase, number 1 overall in Superflex Dynasty for?
This is a Josh Allen point.
Yeah, it's a James Cook argument.
Anyone who wants to participate in the RV Triflex leagues, jump in there. FFPC Dynasty is the best. Got an FFPC stream going, FFPC Dynasty. Find your way over there. You can play Superflex. You can take Jamar Chase number 1 overall if you don't make a decision to trade down. But
my favorite part about the digressions is when you convinced me, and I'm like, yeah, I got to update my dynasty rankings. I definitely got to get Jamar Chase number 1. Wait, what were we talking about? We were talking about James Cook.
You get like 5 first-round picks if you trade down from the 101 to the 108 and let somebody else take Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. But if we get some of these dump-off passes to the running back, if we get a situation, we're talking about an offense that is an offense that obviously is in that sort of top 3 group. But there's also the percentage that in any given year, they could gap the Chiefs. They could gap the Eagles. They could gap the Bengals. And that part of it would go through a dynamic pass-catching running back who is having to deal. When you're talking about the defenses, they're having to deal with all of these other things. They're having to deal with Stephon Diggs. Maybe then now they have to deal with Dalton Kincaid. Obviously, you can still have to deal with Josh Allen. Cook's profile coming out of college was not at the level that they drafted him, and there are still going to be plenty of lingering questions, especially when we didn't light the world on fire as a rookie. But I guess I question this price on him when you're thinking about potential year 2 breakout upside for an explosive player in an explosive offense. When we get into this range and you're starting to think of 0 RB candidates and who could be a massive league winner for you, I'm always looking at these guys who maybe are being faded just a tiny bit because they're not huge, because they're fast as opposed to huge tackle breakers. That's given us a lot of big names, especially even for 1 or 2 years. But you think about a guy like, Austin Eckler. Now, Eckler brings some things to the table that I don't think James Cook is ever going to bring. But, you have these profiles that explode through when we're in this range. I just think you have to create some exposure.
I think he's more like DeAndre Swift.
And a non-injured version.
Hopefully a non-injured version. But I think he does for good for good and for bad. I think may have some of the same like tendency towards the explosiveness at a frustrating level for NFL coaches potentially. And that I think maybe makes him a little bit vulnerable to a Latavius Murray or Damian Harris, probably Harris, taking a lot of like the early down stuff or short yardage stuff in a similar way to like Jamal Williams. But if you told me a year ago that you could get DeAndre Swift on the Bills, I think we'd be like, oh my God. So, that profile doesn't seem as fun after Swift has a injury plagued and, a season that his coaches literally give up on him and draft a clone. But if he stays healthy and adds, that explosive element like he did last year, I think Cook, I want to be overweight. It's like a risk. It feels a little risky, but I definitely want to be overweight. And I'm pretty solidly overweight on him so far in my best ball stuff.
So this is a profile that you feel very comfortable with in this price range.
For sure, yeah. I started to get a little bit. I think I was up at like 16% on him in my best ball portfolio. I'm down to 14%, and that's like more kind of where I wanted to get. I was like, I don't want to get carried away with this because I could see it. I could see Harris consolidating in a Singletary way because Harris, I think, is a little underrated as a pass blocker and as a receiver. Even he's been decently efficient as a receiver, and we've already seen them just be like, we're going to go with the trustworthy guy. So I think there's like. Cook gets kind of sidelined risk, but there's also Cook is a healthy DeAndre Swift on the Bills upside. So I don't see how you're not overweight.
I'm not drafting with $2 million. So maybe there aren't quite as many teams. But if I'm at 25%, is that too high on James Cook?
I don't think so. I mean, he's got the upside to pay that off. So I would be fine with that. I personally, the success rate on him scared me a little bit in conjunction with Latavius Murray and Damian Harris both being very good in that metric and that being kind of like your coach's trust approximation metric, but he's a second-year player. So maybe he works on, his reliability and hitting the right hole, all that type of stuff. And like, if he's hitting the right hole, like, I mean, Damian Harris has no chance. Damian Harris has already been passed by a more talented running back. Like, so
I've had a hard time getting my exposure up on Cook because he goes in a range where I'm always trying to get another receiver. Like I have a ton of Quentin Johnston because he's like feels like the end of something, the end of, not necessarily the end of all of the upside receivers in the wide receiver window because there's a couple guys after that you could still go after, but the end of like the profiles I'm really excited about. I can talk myself into Elijah Moore. I've been talking myself into like Cortland Sutton even, but when Quentin Johnston goes off, that's when it's like I got to talk myself into a guy instead of like I'm excited to click this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I take him a lot, and he goes right around Cook, and I take Burks and Pickens and those other Dotson. I don't know how you guys are getting so much Cook is what I'm asking.
Well, I kind of panic around round 6 and go, or sometimes around 5, and I'm like, I'm gonna get locked out at receiver. So then by round 8, I'm normally like, I can afford a running back pick here if I want. And sometimes Cook falls. I mean, you can get Cook.
Yeah,
I'm not getting a lot of drafts where it's a question of him versus a receiver.
Okay.
Yeah, me neither. I tend to be.
I'm not maybe keeping my eye open. I'm maybe not keeping my eye open to him a little bit too much. Let's talk about a few of these other teams. Our team right now.
I have Damian Harris above ADP as well, but he's the one where I actually have almost zero exposure for the reasons that Ben was mentioning.
Interesting. I'm overweight on him, but only at 10%. So I'm mildly overweight on him.
Yeah, I take a lot of Harris. I don't. You
well,
like
I have
guys?
different players in that range that always seem to be a pretty clear cut pick.
Got it. I take a lot of Harris, and I take less Cook as a result of what I perceive to be less opportunity cost with Harris. So that's interesting. And my other thing with the Kincaid pick, and I've talked about this on a few different pods, but I think there's a couple teams that have gone to where they want to be able to put 2 tight ends into the formation, force the defense to either stay in these light formations with the 2 deep shells that they've been doing, in which case they can do a 2 tight end run formation, or put another linebacker on the field, in which case they can split out one of the tight ends. They have the ability. So I think the Giants did it when they acquired Waller, and they're going to do that with Bellinger a decent amount. I think that was the idea with Kincaid and Knox. I think that was the idea in New England with Gesicki and Henry. And so I do think that the Bills taking Kincaid, to some extent, it will lead to some formations where they put 2 tight ends out there, the defense stays in the light boxes, and they decide to power run. And I think that will be more of a Harris or a Latavius Murray set. Not that this is like a massive point or anything. You guys are making great points about like if Cook is just better, then he's just going to be better. But I feel like we might get a little bit more power running from Buffalo than we have in a long time. Their pass rate over expected has been way high, and it might be back at like 5% instead of 9% or something. And it might be the bigger backs that are doing that. That's just like a reading the tea leaves with the offseason moves thing.
That's interesting. I mean, the most fun way to play that for them is to do the explosive version and put Cook back there.
Yeah, that's fair. And they're probably smart enough to do that. I just think of
Kincaid is also
ends.
Kincaid, we keep hearing it. He's basically a big receiver. So if you want, if you're at a
the
12,
idea is the flexibility.
Explosive 12. Get explosive.
That's a good point.
Kincaid and Cook.
I
don't know.
That's the way they probably will do it, though. You're actually probably right. Shawn, we are on deck. We just had Samaje Perine, Dalvin Cook, AJ Dillon go in this round. Michael Thomas, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman were the last receivers off the board. A couple quarterbacks have gone as well. Top of the ADP queue is Kadarius Toney, hilariously, or I don't know, maybe that's not hilarious. Zach Charbonnet, Chigakonkwo, who is falling. Some more running backs. Rashad Penny looks interesting to me, Shawn. What are you feeling right now?
Well, I think we want to start our tight end push.
Okay.
And it seems like we have a RV/ship chasing approved tight end ready to light the world on fire.
Oh, he wants to roll a clip.
Here.
Pat, you better get a clip up. He's ready to roll your clip.
All right.
And then,
but wait, let's make the second pick before we roll the clip. But the clip is going to have to be in the queue. Shawn goes with Greg Dulcich.
This is a 44-second clip. How much time do you have? Can I play the
clip?
Overtime?
No, we don't have time to play the clip.
They'll give you 3 seconds at least to talk it through.
Over Dalton Kincaid there, which is a little deviation from ADP, but something we can talk about in a moment. Shawn, we are down to 40 seconds with our second pick. I like the tight end pick there. We have 5 receivers. We've got the 1 quarterback. We now have 1 tight end. Do you want a double top tight end? Do you want to get our 3rd running back? I think both of our first 2 running backs have week 13 buys. I'm just going to put that out there. It's not a huge deal, but it kind of makes me want to take Rashad Penny.
Okay, well, that's a possibility. I mean, it's hard. I mean, Rashad Penny may be the best running back in the NFL, playing for Philadelphia. He is always hurt. This is the end of kind of the wide receiver tier. Once Dobbs and Sky Moore are gone, you're going to then draft receivers who are throwaway picks. Rashad Penny?
You want to take Dobbs? Go for it. Or Sky Moore? Go for it. Sky Moore. Take Sky Moore. All right. Roll some clips, Pat.
I thought Shawn wanted to take Penny there. I need to work on my Shawn. Who did you really want to take there, Shawn?
You want to take Sky. I know
Sky?
Shawn.
I thought it was Penny.
No, he wanted to take. I wanted Penny.
I'm going to have to take a Shawn course. Okay. All right. Anyway, Dulcich, let's go.
God, look at that hair. Oh my God. Oh my God, it's so beautiful.
Nathaniel Hackett is such a turd.
I love that, though. Doesn't that make you feel better about him? It's like maybe he'll go someplace now and they're going to dominate.
I love that you, for the record, Cortland Sutton was still on the board, and you're like, after Sky Moore and Dobbs go, there's no receivers left. You're just throwing Cortland Sutton to the wind.
I mean, you're talking about the guy who is after Jerry Jeudy, who is after Greg Dulcich, who is after Marvin Mims, and is like in a battle with Tim Patrick to be.
That's not what I'm hearing. I think they're talking about him playing the X for them.
Cortland Sutton comeback season, Shawn. It's happening. But, Pat, unfortunately, the chat is pointing out that we have only rolled one clip.
Oh, I was so thrown by Shawn.
I mean, after you pointed out that Sky Moore was the worst pick in fantasy football history, it seemed like we needed to layer him into this roster.
Sky Moore, 2 Ys.
That's the fucking sickest name I've ever seen for a wide receiver in my goddamn life.
Sky's up!
Oh, let's go.
Oh, beautiful.
Maybe we should retire the shush because
No.
that's so far
No,
we've yet to
going
succeed.
forever.
We had some success with the highlight reel. I think only Dulcich is, and we're jury's still sort of out there, but we'll take the win. It's been a rough ride, but any clip that ends with shh has not gone well. David Bell might be our best. Our clip. I think it's my favorite clip, but we ruined a wide receiver and a baseball manager with that one.
Yeah, we kind of did ruin a lot with that. But this is still like the sickest thing to end a clip with. So, I mean,
so we got to do it.
What are you going to do? Like end a career or keep doing the shush? I mean, I'm going to keep doing the shush.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
So after we took more, we get Damian Harris. Cortland Sutton does go 2 picks later. Dalton Kincaid, Zach Charbonnet, Okonkwo, Dobbs, and Penny. So Penny makes it into the middle of 10. Pat, you were going to be completely on board with us taking Penny right there.
Totally, yeah. I mean, my thing with FFPC...
You should have been on board. You called him the best running back in the league in the best running back situation in the league. And then you were like, yeah,
the best running back in the league, but we'll take Sky Moore.
I was like, yes, we're going to get Penny.
But he did say, but he always gets injured. So I didn't follow. I didn't put the weight on that enough.
That's where my heart sank. I was like, oh no, we're not taking Penny.
I was drafting a team with Pete, and we selected Rashad Penny at a great spot. And then he asked me, are you worried they're going to cut him? I was like, the best running back in the NFL? I hope not.
My thing with Penny is, like, I realize he always gets hurt, and I don't love that. But particularly in best ball, I'm going to be more hesitant in manage, but particularly in best ball, behind the Eagles' offensive line, with the quarterback who had more design runs than any other quarterback in the league last year by a long margin, is probably the biggest schemed rushing threat of any quarterback in the way that it will impact running back rushing efficiency because the defense has to respect those design QB runs. Anytime he makes it through a full game, if he only gets 10 carries and no catches, like I expect 85 rushing yards. Like I expect him to go 8.5 yards per carry in this situation. It's an absurd setup for a guy who there was a tweet recently. I can't remember who put it out there, but Miles Sanders had the highest percentage of his yardage the lowest percentage of his yardage after contact or the highest percentage before contact. Penny had the highest percentage of his yardage after contact last year of all running backs, probably some minimum rush threshold. Sanders was able to earn a lot of rushing yardage through great blocking and these scheme things, and they were able to get him free, and he didn't have to break a lot of tackles. He didn't have to do a lot after contact. Penny adds that element, but now was in that offense that Sanders was in, right? Like,
well, but Penny is also good before contact. And the other thing that's interesting there is that DeAndre Swift is fantastic before contact. When DeAndre Swift doesn't get hit around the line of scrimmage, he's extraordinary. And so both of those guys, when you're talking about, again, just scenarios that could play out and how you would win a big tournament, how you would win, millions of dollars, that type of thing. I mean, either of those players could end up with an efficiency season that is like peak Jamal Charles, that is like peak Barry Sanders. Obviously, they're not that level of talent, even though we like both of them. But when you combine what they're good at with the Eagles offense, as you're saying there, Ben, The upside is pretty extreme. The issue is just that the other running backs are probably going to touch the ball too. And I'm very comfortable betting on players with extensive injury histories, guys who are not healthy even as the season starts. And yet we know there are some pretty serious concerns with both guys. Now, my Swift percentage is still really, really high. But if you balance those guys, if you get both of them at good prices in different drafts, I think you have to go that way because your chances of at least with one of the two coming out in pretty good shape. Again, there are plenty of other ways the season can also play out, but you have to love the upside for both players.
But again, in best ball, well, before we get there, but I just want to say on those two, in best ball, everything you just said, Swift, Penny, they're going to have strong, like elite weeks in terms of like a 0 RB build, especially. And this is why I end up landing on Penny more because of the cost difference. The difference between round 6 and round 10 is pretty huge in terms of the opportunity cost of like wide receiver, especially. Swift's still a guy you absolutely have to have a ton of, but like Penny in best ball, unless he just goes down after like 2 or 3 weeks, which maybe like we should just expect a year by week 4. But if he can like play most of the year, even if he's in a rotation, I mean, by most of the year, I mean like 12 weeks or something, even if he's in a rotation, I'm expecting him to hit for big plays enough that I get like 5 usable, 7 usable weeks out of that. And like good ones, potentially elite weeks, like where he breaks off 2 long touchdown runs for 150 and 2 TDs, you know? Like, I mean,
are we being a little unfair to Rashad Penny as well? I mean, he coming off a broken leg. Like, I don't think his bones are like more hollow than someone, you know what I mean? Like, I know he did have that long injury history, but like last year, is that really even a part of it? Like, did last year's injury make him more likely to get injured this year? Or are we just
is that not part of sort of the scuttlebutt that the Eagles might do weird stuff with their backfield that maybe he's still not?
Okay, sure, yeah, maybe he's still recovering, but yeah, that's fair.
I mean, I want to believe what you're saying because I'm all in on Rashad Penny.
I'm just defending him as like being like the most injury prone running back because like a broken leg can happen to any player.
And we see players who suffer some random injuries come back and go through long positive stretches. So we get that long positive stretch from Rashad Penny now. And I mean, again, you're looking at a guy who could potentially be referenced as the best running back in the NFL at some point later in his career, although obviously he's burned some really important years.
Best rusher, right? I mean, his receiving stuff is not where you want it to be.
I think you mean specifically rushing when you say that,
right.
Shawn, right?
Right.
Yeah, he's an incredible rusher of the football.
A pure
Shawn, we're on
deck
deck
up there with Derrick Henry, could be up there with Nick Chubb.
For sure.
Yeah,
I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, it really is. We are on deck. Sam Laporta just went off. There's a fun name that we would have maybe considered here to start to build out our tight end room. We still only have the 2 running backs. We did get to 6 receivers on our last turn when we took Sky Moore, Jahan Dotson, the first 4 early. We have JK Dobbins and James Cook as our only 2 running backs, Greg Dulcich as our only tight end. We're in a range where, you know, Jalen Warren, Tank Bigsby are sort of the next 2 running backs by ADP. I've taken a decent amount of both of those. I particularly like Warren. I honestly need someone to get me to stop taking so much Jalen Warren because he's just
it's not going to be me.
It just feels a little too easy. At tight end, Shawn's going to try to convince me to take Cole Kmet here. He is at the top of ADP. He just loves Cole Kmet. I'm afraid of the Bears passing offense. We might as well just get that over with, right, Shawn?
Well, then when we timed out earlier in the draft, it was the wrong selection.
Justin Fields comes back to bite me. We got to stack him with Cole Kmet. It's a great point. All right, we can take Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet's already off the board. Shawn was ready to click his name there. Now we have to figure out the other pick, Shawn. Do you want to go tight end again? I don't really love the value here at tight end.
Yeah, I think that we can wait for some of the tight ends to come back through. Part of what we were talking about is 3 tight ends late is something that is very viable. Even in FFPC, the tight end premium, you're still getting shots at players multiple rounds later than this. That's one of the really fun aspects of it. I think we're looking at Jared Goff to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown at a pretty good price, or we're looking at the aforementioned Jaylen Warren. Tank Bigsby is somebody who, even though I'm a huge ETN believer and not a big Bigsby believer, I do layer him into some drafts to make sure I have that part covered.
No, I think we go Goff. I was just scrolling back up to remember our first 2 picks. It's been a while. Seeing Goff's ADP, seeing that he is clearly the faller here, that's what I was looking for. And reminding myself that we have Amon-Ra right as you said that. I was mind melding with you at the exact same moment. That was the right pick. Komet Goff, an easy turn. We stack up Fields with Komet and build out our tight end, sort of late round tight end room with Dulcich. We also stack up Goff now with Amon-Ra, our 1-2 turn receiver. Gives us a second quarterback sort of window, QB window. We're kind of getting the late part of the QB window here. Obviously, Fields was sort of kind of before the QB window, but same idea, right? We get 2 quarterbacks that are more viable than the really late quarterbacks. That was a really big turn for the way this roster now shakes out in terms of the stacks and the structure of it all.
And I like the fact that we have Dobbins and Cook, even though there's some risk with those guys. I think if you're going to start with the 4 wide receivers, then you put yourself into a position where you're comfortable taking some backs with a lot of upside, but also some downside. I also think that the best group of backs for me in terms of that contingent value are some of the players who come back around at the next turn. I think there are some elite talents who, because their early season volume situation doesn't look particularly compelling, obviously they've got to fall into that range, but then you add them onto your teams. Hopefully you do get some production from your early guys toward the beginning of the season. You can really then start to build out a running back group that is more dynamic from a talent perspective than it is from the perspective of what the implication is in terms of ADP.
We shouldn't be surprised the 0 RB guy refused to take the best running back in the NFL at the 9-10 turn. Also refuses to take Jaylen Warren, who is definitely going to usurp Najee Harris this year at the 11-12 turn. Basically, just like running backs don't matter. We're going to keep kicking it down the road.
Yeah.
We got James Cook, right? We got James Cook, so we're good.
Is the Warren stuff for you, Shawn, that just that they don't have anything tied to him, or is it lingering Benny Snell resentment? Why should we go on board with Jaylen Warren?
No! I haven't thought about Benny Snell for a while.
Do we have a Benny Snell clip for it?
No, we don't have a Benny Snell. But that was not our fault, Shawn.
Brand.
Don't you put that one on us. That one wasn't our fault. Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren's my second highest drafted player, not just running back, although Breece Hall's my highest drafted player. So it is 2 running backs at the top of
I just have to say about Benny Snell, Shawn, like, you pull some incredible calls. Anyone who has listened to me or read anything I've written knows that I give you credit for an incredible amount of stuff. You have had more of an influence on my process than anyone in the world. I swear to God, over the last couple of years, as you kept bringing up Benny Snell, I was like, what are you seeing? Are you over
not the last couple of years, but there
whenever it was
in there.
I was like, Shawn, I keep watching Steelers games and I think
He's terrible. Like, he's not good. He can't even hit the hole. Like, he can't get 1 yard. He's Zeke Elliott. Like,
spend some time with Benny Snell. You'll be on board.
Okay, I gotta spend more time with him, I guess. All right. Anyway, sorry.
So you're saying Benny Snell
back
was
to the
not a hit.
Jaylen Warren.
That wasn't one of the league-winning plays for you, Ben.
No, you've hit a lot of league-winning plays. Benny Snell is one that I'll always be a head scratcher for me.
Well, all I'm saying is that we finally get the guy. We wanted this. We wanted a Steelers running back to emerge and splash the talent, and then the coaches start to be intrigued by it, and they stop playing Najee Harris. It's not the guy. It wasn't our first pick, but I still want to be on board for this inevitable transition to a talented running back.
And it does look like a fantastic selection. I think that he is probably the guy I've selected the most in the 0 RB range in the last 2 weeks. And so one of the things that's very nice about that situation is that I think even though, you can make an argument that everybody is on it, or at least a lot of people are on it. A lot of people like it, and yet it hasn't moved his ADP, at least in a way that makes it not a viable play.
Meaningfully. Yeah.
Right. mean, as long as it remains a viable play, as long as you're just kind of shuffling around where you need to take people who are relatively even, then it's great. And so you can just start loading up there as you get more and more comfortable with it. One of the things that I'm having a hard time with, Pat, and I think that it's interesting to bring up and fun to kind of chat about, because I mean, Ben and I are fairly optimistic about Kenny Pickett. You haven't been as much. And there are some real reasons for that, because it's easy, I think, for people to overlook all of the red flags on his collegiate profile when he's a first-round pick. And you're just kind of thinking, well, all these first-round picks are sort of the same bet as they move through. But he did have a good final year. He had some elements last year that worked. He's surrounded by guys who are very good, or at least have a very wide range of outcomes. And that Deontay Johnson draws targets at an insane rate. And if he does get decent quarterback play and maybe tweaks a few things about his own game, he could take off again. I mean, he seems one of the most undervalued potential plays, at least. You have Pat Freiermuth, who looks like a future star tight end. And then you have George Pickens, who, again, just someone who's very difficult to really determine, because you've got a lot of positives. And yet, I mean, there are elements of his profile in terms of being able to actually draw targets at the NFL level, even going back to college, the drawing targets kind of element, and then also the running after you catch it. I mean, the vertical ability is there. Is the full profile there? Is he going to get to a situation where he can be a well-rounded enough guy that you're truly talking about a breakout star? But they have some complementary profiles, at least I think you could argue. And yet they're one of the teams that, at least in some of the things I have read, are suggesting they're going to try and take as much off of his plate as possible, which I usually think is a negative. You need to get these quarterbacks who are very marginal and not put them in a lot of third downs, not make them be extremely high success rate guys and just slowly move the ball down the field. But if they go pretty run heavy, I think it could actually hurt both the receivers and the running backs. But certainly if they go run heavy, have success, if they're able to go more to an old school element in terms of what they want to do, and Warren is the guy, then again, and you're talking about somebody who beats ADP by 5 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, everything you're saying there makes me very nervous about playing it through an expensive running back who's shown nothing in the NFL, wasn't explosive in college, and can't break away against NFL safeties or
Is that all?
defensive linemen, frankly. So
that was a play. This is like,
yeah, I don't think, I mean, Consigliere saying we kind of need Najee Harris. We need one of us to take it down, or Najee Harris to have the best season of his life to reset the ADP. But I just have a hard time.
I just think the normie's always going to like Najee Harris. There's nothing like it's just always.
Yeah. And he gets defense here. Do people forget Najee was playing through like 3 different injuries last year? That comes up. That was kind of the Zeke last line of defense. That's to me. I mean, a lot of guys are playing banged up, and we forget about it. And with Najee, it's like, don't forget. He was still not good down the stretch when he was supposedly, a little bit healthy or whatever. Like, he just hasn't.
It's a great reference on Zeke, but it's every running back that is in this spot that has fallen to the dead
running
zone.
Backs who underperform or always hurt the year before.
Yeah.
Did you remember that CEH weighed 135 pounds in 2021? Did you forget that? Like, we always get these excuses. We always do.
Yeah.
I mean, and of course we do. Like, I would come up with some excuse too. I mean, not to say he wasn't hurt or anything, but it's just like that's going to get amplified when the underperformance is as bad as it's been. And he was a first round pick. So I don't know. Like, what I like about Warren is I don't think I even need him to take the job. I just need him to force a committee and then be better. And I feel pretty confident about the be better part. And by the way, so do the beat reporters in Pittsburgh. They're saying things like he hits the hole as hard as any running back in the NFL, which, Shawn, you've pointed out is probably because they only really watch Najee Harris, but it's still nice to hear.
Any enthusiasm for Pickett if he makes sense within the build, falls below ADP? One of the things I like to do with Pickett is force a situation where I'm going to get him at good prices too. Not that it matters a ton where he's going.
I will take him. I'm at like 6% on him, so I'm not out at all. And I've taken on some of my higher stake stuff because he's not going to get to
this. Let's get to this in a sec because we are on deck here. Shawn, We got the Komet Goff turn last time around. Warren does go. Bigsby does go. We still only have the 2 running backs. We're now to the Kendre Miller, Jeff Wilson, Kenneth Gainwell range. The free agents are still kicking around if we want to add Ezekiel Elliott or Leonard Fournette to our team. I know that's exactly what you're excited about doing. We have a Chuba Hubbard hanging around. That's maybe more your speed. Some interesting tight ends. We did get Gesicki going in that 12-13 window. Irv Smith, Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill all went as well. We're through, Gerald Everett and Chigo Okonkwo and Dalton Kincaid, and those guys were, multiple rounds ago. Top tight ends by ADP, Dawson Knox, Tyler Conklin are 2 veterans that I like, and I've been taking a decent amount. And then you get to Trey McBride, a little ways down. You get to Michael Mayer. Those are 2 youngsters that you like a lot. Anyone who's been listening to Stealing Bananas knows that when we've gotten to these late round tight end discussions, Shawn, you and I have diverted a little bit. I've wanted to get some of these veterans onto some of our builds. What do you think now that we're on the clock here?
Well, our goal in this draft is to take 5 tight ends. The Roster Construction Explorer loves it for this format. So we have 3 more. So it hurts my heart a little bit, actually, to take some of these names that you're mentioning. At the same time, I think we should take both McBride and one of the 2 names you mentioned.
All right. That sounds great. I got to pick between Dawson Knox and Tyler Conklin, huh? Well, I mean, that's actually an interesting discussion because I have been kind of pounding the table for Knox. I do think he's a really good late round tight end. But when I got through my projections, I actually had a pretty good projection on Conklin. He pretty thoroughly beat out Uzama last year. They still just have him and Uzama. And
I would just note that Ruckert has made a little bit of noise.
Ruckert.
And
okay.
Not that he's going to take anything, but, we're always just worried about guys siphoning off 15% of the routes or whatever.
I feel good about Dawson. Just in tight end premium, I don't feel as great about Dawson Knox. I feel like Conklin has more like 5-6 catch potential in a given week. But I feel good about Knox's role, and I feel good that he's going to be rotational and have some splash weeks. So he would be the one I would prefer here, I think, especially if we're hearing anything about Jeremy Ruckert. Like, Conklin's not. Knox was the tight end 9 last year, and I really don't think Kincaid, because of some of the things I was saying about the ways that they can do things formationally when they drafted Kincaid, split him out, leave Knox in line, whatever, play them at the same time, essentially. I don't think it changes Knox's upside paths a lot. Knox, to me, last year even, was not a season-long upside guy. He's always been like a sub 15% targets per hour run guy, not a huge target earner. But efficiency. He has a high 8 up for a tight end. He's in an offense that throws a ton. He can get some like deep shots. He can score some touchdowns, certainly. They'll use him in the red zone a lot. He has a weekly upside play, not a high season-long upside play, in my opinion. So anyway, he fits a 5 tight end build. We're going to get some splash weeks out of him.
It hurts, but we do select Dawson Knox.
That's all you have to say. Back to you about Kenny Pickett.
Shawn, absolutely destroyed by your latest selection, which he made. Not an auto pick, by the way. He did click the button.
I made a really good pitch there, and you tried to, get it going, but you really just couldn't get it going for Dawson Knox. I respect that, Shawn. Yeah, that burns. You got me good there. Pat, I mean, the reality of the late rounds is the vet that I really like hasn't gone yet.
I know. And honestly, I mean, I like the vet you like too. I don't understand why he's completely free. Although we disagree on I'm sort of surprised. We'll talk. Let's make a note to talk about it when it comes up.
Yeah. I cut into your Kenny Pickett conversation, and you were down on Pickett last year, Pat, more so than I. We talked about it a little bit on ship chasing. I was a little bit seeing some of his production a little bit more through rose-colored glasses. You were a little more pessimistic, but you have been taking him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so Pickett, I thought, okay, the dynasty conversation around Pickett always irritated me because I was just like, what are we doing? Like, in a lot of these leagues, is a super flex pick like okay, but I'd hear people be like, oh, you could take him, in the early second round of one quarterback startups. I'm just like, no, you can't. That's not how you play Dynasty. He offers nothing in that format. He's never going to have a ceiling. He doesn't really profile as a guy that has that kind of ceiling. So I was always like, probably biased against Pickett in a sense. But then last year I do kind of stand by the feeling that I was like, this dude has had multiple opportunities to take advantage of poor secondaries. And he had that big opportunity against the Dolphins early on, which I probably overweighted, but I was like, this was his spot, man. This was his spot. He didn't take advantage. Show me something, Pickett. And he just didn't in that game. When that was kind of a pass funnel situation for him. And then at the end of the season, he gets the Raiders, and it's like, okay, here we go. Surely you're gonna do something against the Raiders, and he just didn't. So I don't think Pickett's very good, but I also think they're committed to Pickett. First round pick, showed enough where he's not going to get benched for what? Do they still have Trubisky? I mean, they don't have an option. They're not moving on. A benching of Pickett, it all of a sudden puts Tomlin on the hot seat. They can't, and Canada's probably out the door, so they can't do it. And I like that in best ball. I think that's an attribute. That's a box to check. So I know it's not the most ringing endorsement of him, but I have taken him on some of my higher stakes stuff because I'm like, he's gonna be out there.
Your endorsement of him is he's going to play.
He's going to play, which I think is important. Look, I mean,
you're like Shawn is constantly telling people to draft quarterbacks who are going to get benched. I'm at least giving him credit for judging a guy here who's not going to get benched.
I mean, you are touting some guys who have pretty decent odds of getting benched. There are probably going to be some quarterbacks getting benched this year. But I mean, yeah, we know, Shawn, you've done a lot of great work on the quarterback window. And one of the reasons that it's tough to select some of these later quarterbacks is you get hit two ways. They don't really have the upside. And then they have job security risks as well. So at least with Pickett, you don't have the job security risk. And then you have some outs to some weekly upside because his weapons are really good. And maybe he gets there off of play action. He throws for enough touchdowns just in a couple big weeks because they're run heavy, but he's efficient off of play action, and maybe that formula actually works. But as far as they lean on Pickett and he kind of blossoms as a pure drop back passer, I'm very skeptical of that, even with the weapons.
I love Jim's comment in the chat here. It looks like a 2-2-11-5 build. That is what we are trending towards here. Still with only two running backs. The full roster at this point: Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Keenan Allen, Deebo Samuel to start, JK Dobbins and Justin Fields at the 5-6 turn, Jahan Dotson and James Cook at the 7-8 turn. That James Cook pick the last time we took a running back. Greg Dulcich, Sky Moore, Cole Kmet, Jared Goff, Trey McBride, Dawson Knox. 4 tight ends in the last 6 rounds. Shawn, we are 11 picks away still. You mentioned that the Roster Construction Explorer loves the 5 tight end build. We get 20 rounds to play with here. I really like our 6 receivers. We got 2 good quarterbacks. We have enough running backs. We're totally fine there. We've got 2. We don't need any more. What do you think about a 6 tight end build? The Roster Construction Explorer probably doesn't have a lot of those types of builds.
Well, it doesn't know that we drafted Dawson Knox, so
yeah,
right.
So it's really just a 5,
right? Yeah, we're throwing that pick away. You have already dunked all over that pick. I think what the Roster Construction Explorer is telling us is the more tight ends, the better. We have tight end premium. We get to play their spike weeks. There are 2 flexes. You can play up to 3 tight ends any given week because of the tight end slot and the 2 flexes. There's a lot of ways that lots of tight ends make sense in a best ball setting where you don't have to actually set your lineup. I think a 6 tight end build while we're here in the 15th round, provided they are 6 tight ends we really like, I think that is something we could do.
And I mentioned it on our preview show, but I do want to mention it again, that Connor is putting together a series kind of looking at what works in this format. And Connor obviously won 2 years ago. He moved 2 more teams into the finals last year. Someone who has done a fantastic job in terms of both having success, but also having an evidence-based background for that, where, I mean, obviously luck is hugely important. By definition, the teams that win got some of those things to break their way. But last year, one of the things that he happened on one of the two teams that made it through to the finals is that he had three tight ends in the starting lineup when he qualified from week 16 to 17. So that thing that you just mentioned, Ben, about the tight ends and how three of them can get in there, I mean, that has definitely happened in big moments for people as they've tried to navigate this FFPC tight end premium format in the past. That's something we want to keep track of. Connor's also done some great work looking at how double elite tight end can be very helpful for you. That's something that you want to consider early on in these drafts, especially if it falls to where the player values kind of line up for you. The flip side of that is that if you're not in a position to execute that part of it, you want to load up and load up and load up, and it's very difficult to get too many unless you completely forget to draft running backs to go along with it.
Yeah, that would be my concern with you guys too. Is that because you skipped the some of the guys in this kind of running back window here. So, what are you guys? What's the plan at running back?
Are you worried? Would you say that you love our receivers, but you're worried about our running backs? The chat seems to be.
I'm saying you probably could use the best running back in the NFL on this roster. That's what I'm.
Berg's comment was, "Your running backs are making me nervous." You have not seen us draft a team before. Our running backs. Well, it's a thrill right now for me. I mean, I feel like I'm cliff jumping.
Berg, I am also nervous about your running backs. So
I'm ready to push this as far as we can possibly push it. Shawn, if the two tight ends that I added to our queue both make it back. Oh, Michael Mayer went. Shawn, I really wanted you to get Michael Mayer back at this 15-16 turn just to make up for that Dawson Knox pain that I made you feel.
Shawn, how many tight ends on your roster is Michael Mayer better than?
All of them.
At least the last three that we drafted.
Shawn loves Michael Mayer. I was hoping he would make it back. He was one of two tight ends. If they both made it back, I was going to push for us to go to 6 tight ends now and then just sort of punt RB3.
In the tight end conversation here, I mean, the running back conversation is a good point in terms of how you think about best ball versus redraft as well. And we'll be drafting a lot of these different types of teams. Obviously, playing in the FFPC main event is one of the most fun things you can do. In a redraft situation, having the two running backs we have right now and nobody else would be absolutely fine.
Yeah, you'd be fine. Yeah, for sure.
The situation in best ball is merely that, I mean, we're not going to be able to make some additions. We're not going to be in a situation where, I mean, we're basically just starting James Cook and JK Dobbins to start the season anyway, and we can let it evolve. We have to have the full mix here. And so losing someone like a Jerome Ford, who is at least vaguely interesting, I mean, that's unfortunate with kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, we're definitely into a tough spot at running back. However, like H Plays Game says, please take a running back. It's not worth the bet. This is not a bit. Like it's not actually a bit. Like, this is the way that we're trying to win. I just want you to know that. I just want to be very clear. The running back situation isn't ideal. Shawn, one name you didn't throw in the queue yet, Deontay Foreman has made it all the way back by like underdog ADP. He is a clear pick at this stage. Hunter Henry is the veteran tight end that I'm always mentioning. He has still made it back. You have Chuba Hubbard in the queue. I love taking him. To me, it's down to sort of those three guys here, unless you have somebody else. I want to hear.
I feel like the room bailed you out with that one.
With who?
Foreman.
Yeah. What are you thinking, Shawn?
Yeah. I mean, I like Foreman. He's a poor man's Rashad Penny. And so it's the case of, do you pass on that profile twice in another situation where the offense,
it's just situation is going to hilarious thing. We have 3 running backs now. They all have week 13 buys. So, we got that going for us. That was our 3rd week 13 buy at running back. But Foreman,
we're going to draft some more guys here, and they're also going to come through for us. Chuba is the easy pick, right?
You want to skip Hunter Henry?
Well, I know that you've got some other stealth guys that you really want as well.
Let's take Chuba. Hunter Henry was the veteran when we took Dawson. Honestly, I would just take Henry over Knox straight up. We probably didn't. It kind of comes down to that Knox pick was probably pushing the 5 tight end build earlier than we needed to be pushing it. I think rather than Knox,
We could have taken like a Jerome Ford there. Could have taken a tight end at this turn. We did need to take 2 running backs there. I like the Foreman Hubbard picks. We now have got ourselves to 4 running backs. JK Dobbins, James Cook, Deontay Foreman, Chuba Hubbard. Now that those names are in there, chat, how you feeling? I mean, I feel like that's a really good 4 running back
Chat seems
build.
to like you guys. Love this team, you guys.
That's
Smash
like, wait.
City.
Suddenly, these running backs are perfect. I take everything back that I said. I apologize. You guys are geniuses. That's basically.
That is generally that is a fair summation of the chat so far. I feel good with that group, Stephanie says. So, yeah. The chat's
That's
back
the
in.
thing about running back. Like, it gets
Well
really
done.
flat, really quick. I mean, Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard did work out for us. I will admit that. But I mean, you can get those type of names at running backs later. Ooh, Foreman stacks with Fields. We got the Fields, Foreman, Cole Kmet stacks.
Adam says he L's your RBs.
Nice. Yeah, no, I mean, that's fair. My daughter does that to me a lot. I'm an L a lot. I get this.
No, he's saying it's short for love, I think, that he loves you.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
No, it's not. He's saying he doesn't like you. Bounce. Let's see. You bounce back.
Shouldn't have doubted you, Berg. Thank you, Berg. See, Berg is saying shouldn't have doubted you. I appreciate you, Berg.
Need more tight ends. So now the chat's they've moved to a
Right.
new criticism. Get your
Right.
tight ends in order. Your running backs
Berg
are fine
was-
now, but fix your tight ends.
I love Berg's journey here because he was stressed out a little bit ago. I mean,
He was.
and then I mean, you know, he admits he shouldn't have doubted the 0 RB god over here.
Shawn had it all in mind. I would have probably taken Henry there and kept pushing it, but that was the time to strike. I feel really good about getting Foreman and Hubbard there.
Pat, when they signed Foreman, one of the things I thought was really interesting was that, I mean, even though there are some contextual things at play, the Bears then had 2 of the, I think, top 6 guys in yards over expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And then they add Roshan, who gives them somebody where, I mean, probably his profile is a little overstated, and yet you have a lot of evasion rate upside with him. You've got what everyone says are elite intangibles. I would expect all 3 of these running backs to be extremely efficient this season, but we don't necessarily know how it's going to split. And it could be a situation too, where if you're losing some of the high value touches, rushing touches to Justin Fields, that you have a smaller pie than it might seem like for a rushing team. How are you ranking those 3 guys in terms of value in relation to price?
Well, it depends a little bit on the site because on DraftKings, Roshan goes last, and on Underdog, Foreman goes last, which is kind of counterintuitive because I think Roshan has more kind of PPR upside. So I think on Underdog, Foreman's probably the best value, and here Foreman was the best value, right? Because Roshan was gone. Yeah, long gone. So if Foreman's in this sort of situation, I think Foreman's probably the best value. Roshan, though, on DraftKings full PPR site going last is very intriguing because I think he could take over the backfield maybe. I think, he could be kind of an Alexander Madison. That's like sort of his, which is maybe like an insult, but he has come, Madison has taken over the backfield and performed well in kind of a Josh Jacobsian kind of way where he takes all the touches, he can do everything, and he's solid. He's not going to screw up. And I think that's a very intriguing kind of outcome that I think is on the table with Roshan. I do have the most Herbert, and I think it's just because of like structure. It comes around, I need a running back, and he's there. And so I have the most of him. But I've made a concerted effort to be overweight on all 3 Bears running backs. I don't know how this is going to break.
That.
I think there is going to be value in this backfield. They're going to run the ball a ton. They all have contingent value because of how much they're going to run the ball. They all have intriguing profiles. They all have
Fields adds to their
profiles.
efficiency.
Yeah, he definitely adds to their efficiency. Yeah. But they all have somewhat incomplete profiles to where like they are going to kind of give other guys opportunities as well. So I don't think like, even though it's 3 different guys, I think maybe even 2 guys could end up having value over the course of the season.
I like that take. It's similar to the thing I was trying to say about Penny earlier, where like I feel like you're getting usable weeks out of those 3. You know what I mean? Like especially the ones that hit. I want to be overweight on them because at least one of those guys is going to be a really nice win right player where, yeah, he's not going to be a 1,500-yard rusher, but the usable week ratio is going to be high. And then the other one's probably going to be solid win right player. And the third, probably a third one will lag a little bit. They probably can't all be good. But
yeah,
like the
someone's a bust probably.
Yeah. But the rushing efficiency is going to be there. There's going to be spike weeks where like the yardage hits, the touchdowns hit with it, and they're usable in half PPR especially. I mean, you're typically talking about underdog in these conversations. I mean, I like that take of being overweight on each of them. Shawn, one of my big sleeper tight ends, Jake Ferguson, went in the 15th round. I do not understand how Hunter Henry went 1701 in tight end premium. Like, I will never understand what's happening with Hunter Henry. I'm fine with us not having taken him, but especially at that turn. I regret that I didn't just want to take him over Dawson Knox at 1401, 3 full rounds before where he actually went. But the fact that no one else wanted him until 1701, it really legitimately confuses me. I got asked this in my Discord today. Is there something I'm missing? I went back through his profile. I can go through that again, but I don't get it. I think he should be going before here. We are back on the clock, though. He's gone. A lot more tight ends went behind him. Noah Fant went off the board. Cade Otton, Zach Ertz, Luke Musgrave, Isaiah Likely. There aren't a lot of other tight ends that I actually love at this point. Logan Thomas, top in ADP, somebody we did talk a little bit about. Some running backs in our queue. Where are we moving here?
Well, Chase Brown is interesting as a guy who, there are some pretty serious issues with him, and yet, he could be the guy for the Bengals, in which case it's a massive home run. I think at this spot, Ty Chandler's the other interesting name, but he also has a week 13 bye. Is it Chase Brown to start with?
Yeah, we can take Brown. I think that's a good call. I love that he could be the guy. You're just that out on Joe Mixon that Chase Brown's just going to beat him out as a day 3 rookie. You can't be more optimistic than that. I'm in.
So my other question here is, we have Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the queue. Did I misclick, or did you?
No, I put him in the queue. He's running with the first. Shawn, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a legitimate pick in the 18th round. Isaiah Pacheco is not fully healthy. Pat's making that face. It's like, why?
Why?
Because I don't think there's a ton of upside. I think they don't think they need upside at running back, so they will play him because they'll play anyone. He had like 6 touchdowns early last season. Like, he could get some TDs. He could run into some stuff. It's a good offense, whatever. In this late stage, it can make sense is basically what I'm getting at. I'm not pounding the table for him.
I took him a bunch in
Can I float Pierre Strong?
Yeah, take Pierre. That's the other guy. I added Pierre Strong to the queue as well. I didn't order those. I was just clicking names that I liked. But Pierre Strong is actually probably my preference over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I really like that.
You have to squint with Pierre, but when you squint, you see something good as opposed to
as opposed to Clyde Edwards-Helaire where you squint and see. I
took a lot of them in the big board, in the pre-draft stuff. I took a lot of them because I was like, maybe McKinnon doesn't sign and he gets to play the McKinnon role worse. But I don't know. I just have a hard time now. You want to talk about bad success rate? This guy, it's like if you can't hit the right hole and you have no explosion, and every offseason you spend talking about some mysterious injury that no one knew about, doesn't feel like.
Well, the situation that you have with Edwards-Helaire and Pacheco is that they're facing these super light boxes, and then they both run into the first defender who is in the vicinity. But the difference is that Pacheco is at least fast.
Right.
Yeah.
So
he hits that defender.
My case would be that Pacheco is good, not great, and Jerick McKinnon is very old, and Deneric Prince everyone just thinks he's going to be Pacheco again because it happened with Pacheco last year, but he's a UDFA or round 7 rookie.
like the competition for CEH is a lot of guys that, especially if McKinnon's not healthy, might not necessarily be relied upon. They didn't ever actually rely on Pacheco big time late last year. They relied on McKinnon in a lot of specific roles. Pacheco finished the season last year with 14 targets, 170 carries, I think it was, 14 targets, barely played on passing downs. He can play on passing downs. He had I think a 6-target playoff game. There's room for him to grow, but I don't know that there was a lot of faith in Pacheco from the way that they used him last year. I think the fantasy community expects more out of him. Shawn, as you just said, I think you agree with me that Pacheco is more limited than I think a lot of people think. I think you and I are in line on that. If he's limited as a lead back, if Prince is not actually a thing as a late rookie, if McKinnon is dead legs McKinnon as Davis called him like 3 years ago, somehow he's
3 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know how that's
Lazarus legs now.
He's Lazarus legs McKinnon now, absolutely. Then I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the answer from the respect of like they've used him before, they trust him to know the offense. He is their former first-round pick. He's at this point the veteran, the stable piece of this backfield. I think he could be the guy they turn to if they're like, yeah, look, we don't need a running back to be good. We just need a running back to be out there and like capable of playing. And then obviously Patrick Mahomes is how we win the game. And then he scores touchdowns. Sorry. No, then Clyde Edwards-Helaire scores touchdowns. I should have clarified.
Sean's just waiting till it's over.
You were too.
I was waiting for Shawn. I wanted to see what Shawn was going to do.
Shawn's still so mad that his Chiefs took Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift. I mean, are you ever going to forgive them?
Well, I mean, one of the things is I'm obviously rooting for the Chiefs guys to succeed. I'm rooting for all of the players to succeed. I do think that one of the things that does get frustrating is when guys are given chances that they haven't demonstrated they deserve. And so, I mean, one of the things that is kind of humorous, if you want to look at it that way, is that if you go back and look at Tyrion Davis-Price in college, I mean, you're talking about a guy who posted a 7.7 evasion rate, which is basically saying that you should have been undrafted if it's a 20-round draft, right? Isaiah Pacheco, in his final season in college, had one forced missed tackle. And so we hear all the time that, I mean, he played in a bad situation, which he almost certainly did, but that's going to give you a chance to break some tackles or to force some missed tackles, right? And Blair's research, when he was kind of digging into some of this SIS stuff for our prospect coverage, was talking about how forced missed tackles is one of the things that does get a little bit undervalued, even though people know to look at broken tackles and forced missed tackles. Now, when you're talking about how guys transition to the NFL and score fantasy points and all that kind of thing, and when we joke about Pacheco hitting the first guy, this is not something that like just happened because he's a late round rookie who's transitioning to the NFL. It's a real problem with his profile. And so, I mean, if there's a backfield where Clyde Edwards-Helaire could still be successful, it would be one that is so perfect for fantasy where the competition is non-existent. I mean, every time that I hear the updated odds for Dalvin Cook, it blows my mind because he's going to end up with not a particularly good contract, it seems like. And the three teams vying for him are like 3 of the 6 or 7 teams in the entire NFL who need him the least. And it's a little tricky when you're working through. So that kind of goes back to our Pierre Strong pick also, where I mean, the only reason why I wouldn't have even been looking at Strong at the previous turn is that, I mean, depending on what's happened in the recent hours and whatnot, but certainly the Patriots are one of, if not the betting favorite to land Dalvin Cook. Now, I mean, maybe that provides a little bit of cover to keep getting Pierre Strong in these final rounds. If that's the case, it's kind of nice. I mean, Dalvin Cook could sign with a team and then, end up being suspended for most of the season. And then you have a situation where they decide, I mean, Pierre Strong is actually awesome. If you like kind of make your minimum like minus 10 carries or something to that effect, I mean, Pierre Strong was the most effective runner in the NFL last year. So when you can get him in the 18th round,
we're late in the podcast, so let me just repeat that. The minimum has to be very low. You said if you make
It has
the
to be
minimum
about 10 carries. Yeah, it's a pretty low
minus,
minimum.
Yeah, minus 10 carries.
Minus 10 carries. That's a better
That's
joke than I even
minus
know.
10 carries. It's got to be particularly low. But Pierre Strong, on a small sample, was very good, is your point. And I agree with that. I think he was a good pick there. But also, you started the chat loved how I went with the Clyde Edwards-Helaire stuff and you just stone-faced me. But then you started your counter with talking about how Isaiah Pacheco is not actually good again. So what am I missing? Like the Chiefs
I mean, just everything about the Chiefs is – also, I was looking to make sure I had this stat right, so that was a little bit of the face.
Yeah. No, but so, I mean, the Chiefs need their passing game to win for them, right? They don't need a running back. They are the definition of a team that does not need a running back to add value. They need a running back to not mess up. Don't miss pass blocks. Just get what's blocked. We, for years on Stealing Bananas, Shawn, have complained that Clyde Edwards-Helaire can't get anything more than what's there for him, what's blocked for him against the light boxes, etc. People thought he was better than he actually was. He would have some efficiency. He would score some touchdowns because no one cared about the running back in this offense. But, if that's all the Chiefs need, and if the defenses are going to continue to only worry about the quarterback, can he not get snaps? All he needs is snaps is where I'm at. Deneric Prince just went. That's how late we are in the draft. My point at this price is I don't think Deneric Prince is actually a thing. Do you guys think he's a thing?
Probably not, right? Odds are
I think
UDFA.
CEH is better odds than him.
And remember that Pacheco, it was deafening. The camp reports and stuff and the hype train, it was really strong. One of the strongest I can remember. And maybe that's because, as a Ronald Jones supporter, I was just oh God,
getting tagged on it.
Good. This is not good. Yeah. But it was really he was called the star of training camp. People, Nate Taylor from The Athletic was kind of leading the charge there. And, it was all very predictive for what was going to happen for the season. But Prince has made a little name for himself in minicamp, but it doesn't really strike me as all that similar. If you step back and remember just how boisterous Chiefs training camp was about Pacheco, that hasn't happened yet. So I don't even think it's really fair to, it's similar, but it's not similar yet.
And if that's the case, you have McKinnon a year older and you have Pacheco, and that's it ahead of CEH. Unless Prince is a real thing. Or they add someone else. They could add someone else, but I don't know, man. CEH is going to actually matter at some point. He's not going to be a league winner or anything. Pierre Strong, the upside cases for Pierre Strong are much, much higher. I do agree, and I like taking him there. We've talked about CH far too long, but it's getting late. We've been doing this stream for 2 hours. What are you going to do?
It's funny how this stuff goes. I was getting before the draft, I was getting kind of razzed for being on CEH. So I'm glad. To be honest, I'm glad someone else is taking this one. I didn't want to be a CEH guy.
I'm just over here defending myself, and you guys are just silent. Dude, go ahead. We don't even care.
Please, please wrap yourself in the CEH brand. I've done it before. It never.
Oh man, I'm just hanging myself over here. All right. Well, we got Pierre Strong. The upside case for Pierre Strong. Obviously, it probably require a significant injury from Rodgers Stevenson, which we're not expecting or hoping for or anything like that. But if that were to happen, Pierre Strong is a guy that could be really good in a situation where he actually got a lot of work. So
he is, and they seem to be high on him, which again is why I don't understand some of the other rumors. So we're a pick away, Ben. We're going to have a hard time getting to our fifth tight end.
Yeah, we can't do it.
Name? We can't do it. No name.
No name. I don't think we can do it. Unless you want to take Donald Parham, but I don't really think that's an effective play. I think there's better decisions. It got really thin. Noah Gray has gone. Cole Turner has gone. Durham Smythe went. I would have probably Durham Smythe was kind of the last leg. I would have probably floated him, but he's off the board. Logan Thomas is off the board. Austin Hooper's off the board.
Are you coming for Durham Smythe now too? You're taking all my grossest takes. You want Robert Woods?
No, he's probably going to run routes for them this year.
We have some running backs to take here, Shawn. You have Dwayne McBride at the top of the queue, another round 13 or week 13 bye. I mean, I still really like him. The other one you have at the top of the queue is Zach Evans, who I also like. They obviously added Sony Michel.
Burks floating Sean Tucker, which I think is a semi-fun, but it's your team, and I don't have any say.
I think they're going to add a veteran. What do you think, Shawn? We're going to go McBride here. So another week 13 bye. McBride's the best play of all of those guys. I think we need another running back still. Or that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 7, but 4 of them have week 13 buys, including our only 2 that are like really reliable. I mean, we could go back to another receiver. We only have 6 receivers. You have some receivers in the queue that I think are very
I mean, Curtis Samuel here is a little bit strange to me. He's somebody who could flourish in this offense, and he goes with. You like that better for sure than Claypool?
Well, yeah, Claypool's a good option as well, and stacked with Fields. So I don't like that for sure. Oh, did Mac Jones never go?
My other point was that we could take Desmond Ridder.
I'd be okay with that. If you want to take a third QB, we only have Fields and Goff. Mac Jones and Ridder are sitting here as well. We do take Samuel there. A third QB would have been kind of interesting, but I'm more or less fine with the 2 QBs as well. Samuel's a really easy pick. It looks like he's going to run a ton of routes for Washington. They don't have a real legit wide receiver 4 option. They're so thin, they just brought in Byron Pringle today. But they look like an offense that I think is going to be really consolidated in their routes this year. It's something I've written about in an offseason stealing signals post. You're looking at McLaurin, Dotson, and Samuel running basically every route. And Samuel's the one that is obviously the least interesting of the 3 profiles, but we just got him in the 20th round. So, I mean, I think at that point you make that decision. Claypool would have been an interesting one to pair with Fields. A lot of options at this stage, honestly, especially with the 2 starting quarterbacks, Mac Jones and Desmond Ridder, as you mentioned. Baker Mayfield, too, actually. 3 starting quarterbacks. We could have went with Baker. The final roster, Shawn. At quarterback, Fields and Jared Goff. At running back, JK Dobbins, James Cook, Deontay Foreman, Chuba Hubbard, Chase Brown, Pierre Strong, Dwayne McBride. At wide receiver, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Keenan Allen, Deebo Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Sky Moore, and Curtis Samuel. Clearly the strength of the team, a lot of firepower there. At tight end, we only got to 4. Greg Dulcich, Cole Kmet, Trey McBride. And the best pick of the draft, Dawson Knox. Woo! The crowd goes wild.
And you look at how that played out. I mean, if we had not taken the 2 tight ends there, then, I mean, everybody we liked was going to be gone before we got back. Now, I mean, you could go with Noah Fant and Hunter Henry at the next turn. There's always the possibility, Pat mentions to me from time to time on our RB Triflex team that we want to resist the temptation to give away Noah Fant because, number one, I mean, you have talent. From a dynasty perspective, you have a future that's probably brighter than it is with the Seahawks. I think that's a little bit of an interesting play. The Hunter Henry play, very straightforward. But
our generation's Eric Ebron.
There you go.
Or Jared Cook, maybe.
That would even be better.
Who's our generation's Eric Ebron or Jared Cook?
No fan. Give us that second contract.
Yeah.
The fantasy dude is all over any Jared Cook guys out there.
Yeah.
So,
he's the next
definitely. So it's kind of crazy. There were picks into the early 17th at tight end. It did then dry up. It's almost hard to believe how tight end heavy this format is when you consider that there were all kinds of guys available at wide receiver and quarterback at the final round. If you needed running backs or tight ends, not so much the case. I mean, I would have taken Travion if we hadn't already taken Chase Brown. I think that's a pretty easy running back selection in the final round. Basically, I'm always double betting against Joe Mixon.
Didn't you hear that he restructured his contract, or are you just
kept them from bringing in somebody better than Joe Mixon to be the starter. So we just want to continue loading up on these other Bengals plays.
Wait,
Yeah,
Mike White went off the board and Mac Jones is still available? What's happening? Am I taking crazy pills?
I think we're getting some QB handcuffs here.
Oh,
Potentially.
is that yeah, that's a Tua Mike White handcuff. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's how you win a tournament.
But yeah, I do think that the decisions there at the 1920 were really interesting and really fun because we could have taken Chase Claypool. I think that's a fun way to do Fields. I mean, I have some McLaurin, obviously, because I play so much Howell, but I do think that Dotson and Samuel are much better risk-adjusted, price-adjusted bets and fun ways to play that. You can set it up late that way. Obviously, we didn't need it here, but to have those two guys opposite Deebo Samuel, again, thinking about how games could shoot out and we could win at the end, I think that part is a lot of fun. I mean, I think there's a scenario in 2023 where Curtis Samuel continues to kind of fade as he did in the final third of last season. But there's also a scenario where he comes roaring back, and I don't think that portion of it is being priced in very heavily at all. I mean, after the Kadarius Toney injury, it's no longer the case, but you could really make the claim that Curtis Samuel and Sky Moore before the Toney injury were pretty similar bets. And they're priced very differently there. The Dwayne McBride
Samuel,
selection,
just to note, because people probably think he's been around for a really long time. I mean, he's 26 years old right now. He'll be 27 at the start of the season, turns 27 pretty quickly here in August, but he's not like 35. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's still very much in his prime.
Can I want to push back a little bit on the McLaurin part because I'm not someone who's been all that high on McLaurin. And I will say I like Dotson too, and I take a lot of Dotson. I think he's well priced, but McLaurin's someone I definitely want to be overweight on. And I don't share the Howell enthusiasm entirely. So I guess but I mean, like, if you look just at like what he's done and who he's been with, it's kind of shocking, right? He had Carson Wentz last year plus half a season of Taylor Heineke, one game of Howell. Then you had Taylor Heineke the year before. Then you had half a season of Alex Smith and Dwayne Haskins, some Kyle Allen mixed in there. Then you had Case Keenum and Dwayne Haskins, the game of Colt McCoy in 2019. And since entering the league in 2019, he's had 2.05 yards per route run, 1.84, 1.81, and 2.04 last year. Career yards per route run of 1.92 with one of the worst quarterback situations to begin a career of any wide receiver I can think of. So I'm like, if Howell's anything, McLaurin could smash. Like, this guy might have a ceiling that we haven't really gotten a chance to see yet.
well, his air yards profile as well paints the picture of a guy who should be going more around wide receiver 10. And obviously that stuff is going to manifest kind of, as you said, in the yards per route. And then with the complicating factor of the quarterbacks, I think that it's kind of an interesting price range in terms of some of the other guys that you could potentially get. And almost for me, I'm looking at the prices here that we're getting in FFPC, and the guys following him are Drake London, DJ Moore, Christian Kirk, Mike Williams. I mean, some of those guys I'm not selecting. And in that case, I will take him. There are also some players I like to reach for to set up certain builds kind of in the next wave that I also prefer in some instances. For me, a lot of it is that Dotson has this chance to really blow up. And if you can make that portion of the San Francisco-Washington play a couple rounds cheaper, then it allows you to do some other things. But I completely agree. And that's one of the reasons why I like playing that San Francisco-Washington game and why I do have a decent amount of McLaurin, even though, I mean, I think there are some other names in that range that you could make some profile-based cases for when we're looking for second-year breakouts. I mean, Drake London, Christian Watson.
I really like Drake London, yeah.
And
Watson's exciting.
I mean, if their offensive contexts aren't terrible, they're going to beat those prices. But I do think there's still a lot of risk in those two offenses.
I do too. I've kind of talked myself more into the Falcons in some ways, but it's more that I just think Drake London he was a much better prospect than Watson. I think all in all, he had a better rookie season, given just the larger sample size of it. I think, it just makes me more confident in what we got. But yeah, things could go off the rails again in Atlanta for sure. But I don't know. Like one of the leaks that I feel like I've had over the last couple of years a little bit is like guy we just got a little bored with, but is still in his prime and is in an improved situation. And McLaurin kind of fits that archetype to me of like, he's not flashily slowing down. He statistically was much better than his teammate last year. I mean, Dotson definitely flashed, but Dotson I didn't think was a great prospect. Certainly not a terrible prospect. But I think if one of these guys is going to absolutely crush this year for me, it is McLaurin. And that downfield plus the number one on your team profile, I think is a very exciting spike week play. Someone's saying he doesn't have 30-point upside. Like, yeah, he doesn't with Taylor Heineke. But like the whole point is we might not know what this guy's true ceiling is yet.
And if you're not taking him as part of a building in late Sam Howell, then you're released from that portion of it where, I mean, Jacoby Brissett probably not going to hurt these guys. I don't think that he elevates them in the way that a hit season, which might be somewhat unlikely, but in the way that a hit season might. But if you have him without the quarterback, I mean, you're more or less fine either way, with the exception of the fact that you probably lose some ground during the time period that Sam Howell is playing poorly enough to get benched. But then also in redraft, as we kind of think in that direction as well, I mean, you don't have to be that focused on some of the elements of the offense because even McLaurin's downside probably going to be okay. Now, Ben and I have been in situations where we benched him in the main event race for the money. And so anytime that you have a guy where that's kind of your background with him, where he could be a benchable player as you're trying to win.
Right.
I mean, that was a really deep wide receiver room where we had rookie year Amon-Ra earning 10 targets a game. And so it came down to McLaurin or Amon-Ra. But yeah, it sucked to bench your third round pick in the shootout. Like, you're like, man, this sucks.
I'm giving him the Robin Williams, it's not your fault hug. And McLaurin's on my roster, and he's gonna. Your boy Howell is gonna have a league winning season, but it's flowing through McLaurin. I'm calling it now.
So you're giving up the Brissett take. You're willing to be a McLaurin.
No, Brissett, because to me, I like the Brissett part of it. It's another out to it, right? And Howell, my concern with Howell is not that he won't be fun. I think he will be fun. You see all these throws he's making; they're really fun. He takes a ton of sacks and he throws interceptions. But like, I don't care about that. I only care about it because I can't shuffle my roster out in best ball. I'm in on Howell as a late round main event pick. I think that's very fun. And I'm in on his receivers because I think he's going to create fun offense. What I don't love is I draft a guy and then in a 3-week sprint format like Best Ball Mania, I'm down a quarterback because Sam Howell was having a little too much fun out there.
Well, we'll see. That makes sense. I was looking at some of these other rosters. Our buddy Daigle, the chat was liking early on. Got Cooper Kupp, Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson. Goes Joe Mixon, who Shawn has already mentioned is going to get beat out by our guy, Chase Brown. But Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore, Pat Freiermuth, Treylon Burks. I really liked what he did late. He got Dalvin Cook, Zach Charbonnet, Elijah Mitchell, Jalen Warren, who we talked a lot about in this range, Pickett, Tyler Conklin, Jerome Ford, and then his receivers like Jaden Reed, Marvin Mims in the 17th, DJ Chark in the 18th, Khalil Shakir in the 19th, Braxton Berrios attack on in the 20th. But Mims in the 17th there, a couple of these picks.
That's nice.
Late. That was nice. Another one I want to point out, our buddy Dom Baryani. He's the back-to-back main event champion, friend of ship chasing, friend of Stealing Bananas, who we had him on both places after he and his co-managers won the main event for the second year in a row. Starts Tyreek Hill, Chris Olave. The main reason I want to point this out is he drafted a ton of guys we were talking about on the turn. So either he, just likes the guys that we like. We've had a lot of chats with Dom over the years, Or else he might have been watching the stream and trolling
Good
us. a little
values,
bit.
though. Good values to get him
Yeah.
that much
So
later.
he goes Tyreek Olave gets Gibbs in the 3rd, Jerry Jeudy in the 4th, but he gets Kyle Pitts in the 5th. We were talking about him at the 3-4 turn. Gets Godwin in the 6th. We were talking about that was the guy we almost took when we auto picked Justin Fields. Takes James Conner, kind of an odd pick there, Dom. Quentin Johnston, a guy we were talking about a bunch at our 7-8 turn. Rashad Bateman goes. He gets Rashad Penny, a guy we were talking about a bunch at the 9-10 turn. Russell Wilson goes. Tank Bigsby. We were talking about Jalen Warren and Bigsby at the 11-12 turn. Derek Carr, Brock Purdy, Rashid Shaheed, Gus Edwards, Noah Fant. He grabs Durham Smythe late as well, Deneric Prince, and Jordan Mason. I was noticing this throughout that Dom kept seeming to fall into the guys that we decided against at our turn. They would make it back and Dom would land on them. So I, surprise, really like Dom's team as well.
Yeah, it's nice.
And it's interesting there. You mentioned Pitts. Pitts and Kittle go way below where you would expect in this format. And partly, you do sort of wonder if we weren't the only team pretty excited about building out pretty heavily with tight ends in a little bit later portion of the draft.
But it's something that's happening, and pretty much every best ball format is that the elite tight ends have fallen a little bit this year. And it's understandable with Pitts given the failed breakout last year, but then you zoom out and you're like, he did have 1,000 yards as a rookie. So maybe we should, not be completely jumping ship. And then Kittle is coming off a very strong season last year. It's up and down, but Kittle's always up and down. That's what you signed up for. And, he was on the winning drafters championship team, which is what I mention that all the time, but it blows my mind. Like in a weeks 1 through 17 team, the winning tight end was not Kelsey, it was Kittle last year. And yet he's fallen by a decent amount from where he was last year.
And he can give you 40-point games at any time.
Yep.
Well, we're past 2 hours. I think we're about ready to wrap it up. Pat, you have the 1s and 2s. The chat's winding down. I think we're there.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for checking out this special stream. We'll be back we'll be back tomorrow for regular ship chasing. Do you remember what
3rd night in a row?
I've wiped my brain of what our plan is, but we're doing an NFC team.
Yes.
Right? Isn't that what we're doing?
Yeah, we are. We're
NFC
doing an
basketball
NFC basketball team. We filled that up. But yeah, that'll be a fun day.
Yeah, so that's full, but that'll be a lot of fun. It'll be our first NFC best ball of the year. We'll be doing a couple of those. And so definitely check that out. Check out next Monday, I'll be doing my Pros vs. Joes. If you like these special Pros vs. Joe streams, we got one more of those for you. What do the people got to know about RotoViz Radio? All the stuff you're doing, Shawn. He had as I mentioned, a Breece Hall article, which I love to see.
Yeah, we're looking at Breece Hall. As I mentioned, Connor has a series coming out. Eric Hove, who is a ship chaser, had his debut article on RotoViz this week looking at the FFPC Superflex tournament. I've been doing some drafts with him. I mean, he's a fantastic guy, great writer. I mean, for the debut piece, it was just wonderfully written. I love his drafts. I mean, they're very similar to mine. So that
we drafted with Eric last year in a 5-5-5 and almost advanced it. It was a real.
It was a fun team, too. It had a shot, and we missed by like 12 points, I think it was. Me, Pat, and Eric, the three of us drafted together.
Yeah, he's awesome. So check that out using some info from the Roster Construction Explorer and what have you. And then, Ben, you and I will be drafting in later in the week. Colin Kelly and I had King Cap on RotoViz Overtime this week. Not only is he a very successful drafter, but a wildly entertaining person. Check that out.
He really is. We need more King Cap in our lives.
He had he and I kind of debated the Mark Andrews pick. So when I was asking Pat about that early, I was trying to make sure I get all my contrasting viewpoints there. And then Pat, you and I will both be drafting with Pete tomorrow morning, I believe.
That's right. I'm writing an article about kind of what I'm looking for in tight ends, and Mark Andrews is the poster boy of every single thing. So if you need, do you need Mark Andrews convincing? Is that what it is, Shawn?
Well, he wasn't on. in on it. And I mean, I don't want to.
Oh, he wasn't in on it. Okay.
Right. I don't want to take the negative of that when he's not here to argue for
well,
it. I had mentioned that I had some skepticism about maybe the actual quality of the receivers they've added.
I'll DM King Cap the Mark Andrews hype piece that I'm working on once I get done. Check that out at legendaryupside.com. I still do have some underdog credits. If you haven't signed up for Legendary Upside, you can sign up. At the top of the page there, it says $50 underdog credit. You click that, you fill out a form, give me your username, and you get a $50 underdog credit for the yearly subscription to Legendary Upside. I should mention you got to sign up for the yearly right now to be eligible for that. Best ball rankings, DraftKings rankings, underdog rankings, all that good stuff. Ben, you just put out your full projections, right, on Stealing Signals?
Yep. Yeah, release those. Talk through them, obviously, with Mike Leone in the projection specials over on Establish the Edge. I've talked through a bunch with Shawn on Stealing Bananas. The full projections are out for Stealing Signals subscribers, along with a long written intro into them to explain why you shouldn't care about projections at all. They are just numbers, and this is my strong pitch to subscribe and get my subscriptions and get my projections. They literally couldn't be more meaningless.
Well, but I mean, like, seriously though, like doing an exercise and then thinking through what that exercise doesn't cover, right, is like, I think absolutely critical. Like one of the things that, like, you know, like if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail sort of thing. Like that kind of thing happens in fantasy football analysis all the time, especially as you're getting like deeper into fantasy football stuff. It's like, I've got this new stat. I'm going to use it to understand every single thing. Right. But like, it gives you this little piece of the puzzle and then you got to zoom out. So I actually think that's an awesome way to think about projections.
Shout out Nick Costantino in the chat. He is one of Dom's buddies. Nick, we did talk through your team. I liked your team, but he said it's not one of their best work. I didn't like some of your later round picks. Like, you know, Rashid Shaheed and Gus Edwards and stuff. Like, what are they doing for this team? But anyway, I really like the rest of it. You gotta
come on.
You got back-to-back champs. Gus Edwards, come on, man.
Nick's a great dude. Rashid Shaheed's actually a fair pick. I don't know why I picked him out of that list. Brock Purdy's another one I really like that I looked back on, Shawn. As the Dawson Knox pick, we could have taken Purdy as our third QB, stacked him up with Debo, probably better than Dawson Knox. Anyway.
All right, guys.
We've done it.
We landed the plane. The plane took back off. I don't know if you guys are watching Hijack. There's a little bit of spoilers for Hijack, but it's a little homage to Hijack right there. But now we are landing for real this time. We'll see you guys tomorrow.